Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto becomes the harem king in the world of DxD? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. A Fox in a Devil's Town. The end was not an explosion. It was silence. A deep, profound quiet that swallowed the roar of battle, the clash of gods, and the screams of a world tearing itself apart. One moment, Naruto Uzumaki was standing across from a being of cosmic malevolence, his hand radiating the light of 1,000 suns. The next, he was falling through a void of fractured color and screaming physics, the sensation of his very atoms being unwound and respun into a new, unfamiliar tapestry. It was less a journey and more of a cosmic execution, a final, convulsive shudder of a dimension he had just bled to save. He landed without impact. His feet met solid ground, but there was no thud, no jarring shock to his bones. The world simply solidified around him, replacing the nauseating chaos with a cool night air that smelled of damp earth, exhaust fumes. And something else, something sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit left in the sun. He stood in the shadow of towering, lifeless structures that scraped a sky polluted by a sick, orange glow. Strange metal beasts with glowing eyes roared past on hard, black rivers, their sounds alien and jarring. Naruto's senses, honed by a lifetime of war and attuned to the subtlest shifts in nature, were screaming. Not with alarm, but with utter, bewildering confusion. He couldn't feel the familiar pulse of the world's chakra, the lifeblood of his home. Instead, there was a thrum of different energies. A discordant symphony of sharp, aggressive power and a soft, gentle luminescence that seemed to weep from the heavens. And beneath it all, that sweet, decaying scent, an energy that felt ancient, seductive, and deeply, fundamentally wrong. His clothes were tatters. The black t-shirt and orange pants were shredded, and the six-paths sage mode cloak, a symbol of his hard-won power, was little more than a collection of scorched rags clinging to his shoulders. He felt a profound emptiness, a severing. He reached out with his senses, a desperate search for a familiar signature, Kakashi's calm crackle, Sakura's vibrant warmth, Sasuke's cold, sharp indigo. There was nothing. Only the strange, alien energies of this new place. He was adrift. A leaf torn from its tree and thrown into a different, unknown ocean. Kurama stirred within him, a low grumble that was more felt than heard. Kit, where are we? This isn't home. Naruto's hand clenched into a fist. He took a steadying breath. The strange air filling his lungs. I know, he murmured, his voice rough. Panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. He was a survivor. He was the child of prophecy, the savior of the world. His world. Whatever this place was, he would face it the same way he faced everything else. Head on. His gaze swept his surroundings. He was in what looked like a park, a small island of green amidst the gray titans. A water fountain stood silent and dark in the center. He walked toward it, his movements fluid and silent, a ghost in a world that wasn't his. He needed information. He needed to understand the rules of this new battlefield. Then he felt it. A spike of that rotten sweet energy, sharp and sudden. It was followed by a flare of fear so potent it was like a taste of blood in the air. His head snapped in the direction of the feeling. It was close. Too close. Instinct, honed by countless life or death struggles, took over. He vanished. Not with a burst of speed, but by simply ceasing to be in one place and appearing in another, a flicker of motion too fast for an untrained eye to follow. He reappeared behind a thicket of manicured bushes, his presence completely masked. Below, near the fountain, a scene of grim familiarity was playing out. A boy, no older than himself, was impaled on a spear of violet light. He wore a school uniform, his face a mask of agony and disbelief. Standing over him was a woman with long, black hair and a cruel smile. She was dressed in an outfit that left little to the imagination, but what truly drew Naruto's attention were the black, feathered wings sprouting from her back. They were like a crow's, but filled with a palpable malice that made the air feel greasy. It's a shame, Issei Hyodo, the woman purred, her voice dripping with false sympathy. To think a human could possess a sacred gear of that caliber. But Lord Azazel wants to avoid any potential future problems. So, you have to die. Blame God for putting something so interesting inside of you. The boy, Issei, coughed up a mouthful of blood. What are you? Just a fallen angel, doing my job, she said with a dismissive wave. Goodbye. She raised her hand, another spear of light forming. Ready to deliver the final blow. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Fallen angel. Sacred gear. God. The words meant little, but the actions were universal. A predator tormenting its prey. A bully crushing someone weaker for their own selfish reasons. It was the very essence of the hatred he had fought his entire life to overcome. He had promised Jiraiya he would bring an end to the cycle. He had promised Nagato. He had promised his father. That promise didn't die with his world. He didn't announce his presence. He didn't shout a warning. The time for words was long past. As the fallen angel's spear began to descend, Naruto moved. He pushed off the balls of his feet, appearing directly between the killer and her victim in a silent flash of orange and black. The woman's eyes widened in shock. What? She never finished the thought. Naruto's right hand was already cupped, chakra swirling into it with a sound like a miniature hurricane. It was not the blue of his standard Rasengan. Infused with the limitless power of Sage Mode, the sphere was a churning vortex of pure, golden energy, a miniature sun born in the palm of his hand. It radiated a pressure that made the very air feel heavy. An overwhelming aura of life and nature that was the antithesis of the fallen angel's profane power. Rasengan, he said, his voice level and cold. He didn't thrust it forward. He simply opened his palm. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The golden sphere touched the fallen angel's chest. There was no grand explosion, no deafening roar. There was only a grinding, annihilating sound as the Rasengan expanded, its rotational power not just pushing her back, but erasing her. Her spear of light shattered into motes of harmless energy. Her smug expression twisted into one of pure, unadulterated terror. Her body was caught in the vortex, twisted, and then violently atomized. In 1 second, she was a threat. In the next, she was nothing but a shower of black feathers drifting lazily to the ground. Silence returned to the fountain square, broken only by the pained gasps of the boy on the ground. Naruto stood over him, the faint golden glow of his chakra fading from his palm. He looked down at the dissipating feathers, his expression unreadable. He felt no satisfaction. Just a weary sense of resignation. A new world, same old story. He turned his attention to the boy. Issei stared up at him. His eyes wide with a mixture of awe, terror, and a creeping, fatalistic confusion. The spear of light was fading, but the wound in his abdomen was mortal. You're okay? Naruto asked, his voice softening slightly. It was a stupid question, but it was all he could think to say. Issei coughed again, a weak, wet sound. I'm dying, he wheezed. But, who are you? An angel. Before Naruto could answer, a new presence made itself known. A crimson light bloomed nearby, and a voice, feminine and laced with an authority that bordered on regal, cut through the night. It seems we were a moment too late. Naruto straightened, his body instantly shifting into a relaxed but ready stance. From the crimson light, a group of figures emerged. The leader was a young woman with stunning, fiery red hair that fell to her waist and eyes the color of a clear blue-green sea. She wore the same school uniform as the boy, but she carried herself with the poise and grace of a queen. Flanking her were others, a handsome blonde boy with a princely air, a small, white-haired girl with a stoic expression, and a tall, buxom woman with black hair tied in a long ponytail, a gentle, almost seductive smile playing on her lips. They all radiated that same sweet, decaying energy he'd sensed earlier, but theirs was refined, controlled. Powerful. They weren't like the winged woman. They were something else. The red-haired girl's eyes surveyed the scene, the dying boy, the fading black feathers, and finally, Naruto. Her gaze lingered on him, a flicker of shock and intense curiosity in her expression. She had felt the confrontation from a distance, a sudden spike of fallen angel energy, then an eruption of something else. Something immense, overwhelming, and utterly alien. A power that felt like staring into the sun. You dealt with the fallen angel? She asked, her tone even, betraying none of the turmoil her senses were experiencing. She was going to kill him, Naruto stated simply, gesturing to Issei. I stopped her. The woman with the ponytail stepped forward, her smile widening. Era, she cooed, her eyes crinkling with amusement. You didn't just stop her. You obliterated her. I haven't seen power like that in a very long time. It felt so pure. So natural. Her gaze was intense, analytical. Naruto felt a subtle probe of energy wash over him, like a gentle current of electricity. It was trying to read him, to understand the nature of his power. He didn't bother to block it. Let them look. What they saw would only confuse them more. Akino, the red-haired girl said. A note of warning in her voice. My apologies, Rias, Akino replied, though her smile didn't falter. I was just curious. She focused on Naruto again. But a little test is in order, wouldn't you agree? Without another word, a crackle of energy sounded from above. A bolt of golden lightning, tinged with a holy aura that made Naruto's skin prickle, lanced down from the sky, aimed directly at his head. It was unbelievably fast, a spear of divine judgment meant to incapacitate, if not destroy. The others tensed, Rias's eyes widening in alarm. Akino, no. But it was too late. The lightning was about to strike. Naruto didn't move. He didn't flinch. He simply raised his head and watched it come. Just as the bolt was about to connect, he raised his left hand, palm open. A vortex of wind, no larger than his hand, materialized in front of him. It spun with impossible speed, silent and precise. The bolt of holy lightning struck the vortex and was swallowed whole. It didn't dissipate or explode, it was simply gone. Consumed by the churning wind and redirected harmlessly into the earth beneath his feet. He lowered his hand, his golden-orange eyes, slitted like a cat's, fixed on Akino. Is your test over? He asked, his voice calm. There was no anger, no malice. Just a simple, direct question from a being who had just treated a blast of celestial power like a minor inconvenience. Akino's smile finally faltered, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. The others were equally speechless. To so casually nullify her holy lightning, a power that made devils tremble, was unthinkable. This person, this boy in tattered clothes, was operating on a level they couldn't begin to comprehend. Rias Grimoire recovered first. She was the heiress to a great and powerful clan, a leader who did not succumb to shock. She saw not just a threat, but an opportunity. An unprecedented, world-altering opportunity. Forgive my queen's impulsiveness, she said, her voice smooth as silk as she stepped forward. She can be overly curious. My name is Rias Grimoire. And you are? Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto Uzumaki, she repeated, tasting the name. It is a pleasure. You have our gratitude for saving this boy. Though, I fear you were only delaying the inevitable. She gestured to Issei, who was now barely conscious, his breathing shallow. Naruto knelt beside the boy, ignoring the devils for a moment. He placed a hand on Issei's chest. A warm, green chakra enveloped his palm. It was the mystical palm technique, a fundamental medical ninjutsu. But infused with the life-giving energy of the six paths. It was something far more. The gaping wound in Issei's abdomen began to close at a visible rate. Torn muscle knitted back together, ruptured organs regenerated, and lost blood was replenished. The color returned to Issei's face, his breathing evening out. In less than a minute, the fatal wound was gone, leaving behind only torn, bloody fabric and smooth, unblemished skin. Issei's eyes shot open. He sat up, patting his stomach in a daze. I'm alive. The hole, it's gone. He looked at Naruto with an expression of pure, unadulterated hero worship. The devils watched this display of casual, miraculous healing with another round of silent, profound shock. They could heal, of course. Phoenix tears could perform miracles. But this was different. This was a fundamental manipulation of life force itself. Performed with no incantation, no magic circle, just a touch. Rias's mind was racing. Raw power that could atomize a fallen angel. Defensive capabilities that could nullify holy lightning. Miraculous healing that could reverse death itself. He was not just powerful, he was a walking, breathing anomaly. That is impossible, the blonde boy, Kiba, whispered, his usual charming smile gone. The small girl, Kaneko, just stared, her golden eyes wide. His energy, it feels like the whole world, she said, her voice a soft monotone. Rias knew she couldn't let him walk away. She couldn't afford to. An individual of this power, left to his own devices, could shatter the fragile peace between the factions. Or, he could be the ultimate trump card. Naruto Uzumaki, she said, her voice firm. Reclaiming his attention. You are clearly not from around here. You wield powers we do not understand, and you have just involved yourself in the affairs of devils and fallen angels. You are in a world of danger you cannot possibly comprehend. I can offer you answers. I can offer you protection. Come with us. She extended a hand, a gesture of invitation. It was a calculated move. An offer of sanctuary from a position of perceived strength. Naruto stood up, looking at her outstretched hand but making no move to take it. He glanced around at her companions, the Queen, Akeno, who was watching him with a newfound, dangerous level of interest, the Knight, Kiba, who held a hand near his hip, ready to summon a blade at a moment's notice, the Rook, Kaneko, who stood oving but radiated a surprising amount of physical power. And Rias, the King. He understood the formation. He had seen it on a shogi board. This was her team. Her family. Answers, he said. Fine. I've got a lot of questions. He had no interest in her protection. He was quite certain he was the most dangerous person in a 10-mile radius, but knowledge was what he needed most. He nodded. Lead the way. Rias allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. She lowered her hand and turned. Follow me. Our clubhouse is not far from here. The walk to the occult research club was a study in tense silence. Issei, now fully healed and practically bouncing with energy, tried to ask Naruto a million questions, ranging from, are you a superhero? To, can you teach me how to do that so I can impress girls? Naruto answered with noncommittal grunts, his attention focused on his surroundings, absorbing every detail of this strange new town. Rias's peerage flanked them. Kiba remained wary, Akeno's gaze was heated and inquisitive. And Kaneko walked surprisingly close to Naruto, occasionally sniffing the air around him as if trying to decipher his scent. She seemed to be the most sensitive to his nature energy. And it clearly fascinated her. They arrived at a dilapidated, old-school building that stood apart from the main campus. It looked abandoned, a place forgotten by time. Rias led them inside. The interior surprisingly clean and well kept. They ascended a flight of stairs and entered a large room that served as a lounge. Plush velvet couches, a handsome wooden desk, and a fully stocked tea. Set gave it an air of aristocratic comfort that clashed with the building's exterior. Please, make yourself comfortable, Rias said, gesturing to one of the couches. She and her peerage took their seats opposite him. Issei, looking completely out of his depth, hovered awkwardly near the door until Rias gave him a pointed look, and he scurried to a seat next to Kaneko, who promptly ignored him. Akeno began preparing tea with practiced elegance. So, Naruto-kun, she began, her smile back in full force, that power you used, it wasn't demonic, nor was it holy. It felt alive. What was it? Chakra, Naruto said simply. It's the energy of my world. Your world. Rias latched onto the phrase. You mean you are not human? I'm human, Naruto clarified. Just not from this world. I think. He explained. In the simplest terms possible, the final battle that had sent him here. He left out the details of the Ten Tails and Kagaya, speaking only of a dimensional rift caused by a clash of immense power. Rias and her peerage listened, their expressions growing more serious with every word. A being from another dimension. It explained why he was a complete unknown, why his power signature was alien. It also made him infinitely more valuable and infinitely more dangerous. Rias decided it was time to lay her cards on the table. She began her explanation, her voice calm and measured. She spoke of the three great factions, the devils, the angels, and the fallen angels. She explained the great war that had ravaged their world, killing the original four great Satans and God himself, leaving a fragile, bitter truce in its wake. She described the role of sacred gears, miraculous artifacts bestowed upon humans by God, and how Issei possessed a particularly powerful one, the boosted gear, which was why he had been targeted. Naruto listened patiently, his expression unchanging. He'd heard it all before. War, gods, power struggles. It was the same sad song on a different instrument. When she spoke of the devils, he felt a faint echo of Kurama's demonic chakra. When she spoke of angels, he thought of the pure, benevolent energy of his six-path sage mode. This world was a twisted reflection of the forces he had already mastered. Finally, Rias came to the point. As you can see, this world is a dangerous place for a powerful stray like yourself, she concluded. The fallen angels know of your existence now. The angels will sense your power soon, if they haven't already. And the devils, many would see you as a threat to be eliminated or a tool to be captured. I am offering you a third option. I can make you one of my own. I can offer you a place in my peerage. She summoned a small, ornate box. Opening it, she revealed a set of chess pieces, each glowing with a faint, crimson light. These are evil pieces. Created by the great Satan Ajuka Beelzebub. A full set allows a high-class devil like myself to reincarnate other beings into devils to serve in my household, my peerage. Each piece corresponds to a role on a chessboard. Akino is my queen, Kiba my knight, Kaneko my rook. She picked up a pawn piece. Given your immense power, you would likely require multiple pieces. Perhaps all 8 of my remaining pawns. But in return, you would gain the protection of the House of Grimoire, a noble and powerful devil clan. You would have a home, a family. You would belong. The room fell silent. The air was thick with anticipation. Issei was vibrating with excitement at the prospect of this ridiculously cool guy joining their team. Kiba and Kaneko watched him intently. Akino's smile was gone, replaced by a look of genuine hope. Rias's expression was one of calm confidence, certain she had made an offer he couldn't possibly refuse. For a lonely, displaced soul, what old be better than the promise of a family? Naruto looked at the glowing red chess piece in her hand. He thought of the Akatsuki, of being used as a weapon. He thought of the villagers who had once treated him like a monster to be controlled. He thought of the long, hard-fought battle he'd waged not just for his world, but for his own freedom, his own right to choose his path. He met Rias's gaze, his slitted eyes clear and unwavering. No, thank you. The 2 words dropped into the silent room like stones into a still pond. Rias's confident expression crumbled into one of pure shock. What did you say? She stammered, unable to believe what she'd heard. I said no, Naruto repeated, his tone polite but utterly firm. I appreciate the offer, Grimoire-san. It's a kind one. But I just finished fighting one war. I didn't survive it just to become a soldier in someone else's. He leaned forward, his presence suddenly filling the room, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. I don't bow to any king. I don't serve any god, and I sure as hell am not going to become a chess piece. I am Naruto Uzumaki. And I am my own master. The finality in his voice was absolute. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration of principle, a statement of identity from a man who had forged his own destiny through blood, sweat, and unbreakable will. He was not a pawn. He was the entire board. Rias was speechless. No one had ever refused reincarnation. The power, the extended life, the sense of belonging, it was a temptation few could resist. Yet this boy, this enigma from another world, D dismissed it without a moment's hesitation. His independence wasn't arrogance, it was an intrinsic part of him, as fundamental as his incredible power. And that, more than anything, was what truly captivated her. It was what she, in her gilded cage, secretly longed for. Before anyone could break the stunned silence, the air in the center of the room shimmered. A complex, teal-colored magical circle bloomed on the floor. Its intricate runes spinning with precise, mathematical beauty. 2 figures emerged from the light. The first was a young woman with a short, black bob cut and glasses. She wore the school uniform with an air of severe efficiency, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, immediately began to analyze every person in the room. The second, the one who was clearly in charge, was also a young woman. But she carried an aura of cool, calculated authority that was a stark contrast to Rias's fiery charisma. Her hair was also cut in a short bob, and her violet eyes missed nothing. She was Sona Citri, heiress to the House of Citri and the student council president of Kuo Academy. Sona's gaze swept past Rias's peerage, flickered over Issei, and then landed squarely on Naruto. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She, like Rias, was a devil of high standing. Her senses were sharp. The energy pouring off Naruto in subtle waves was like nothing she had ever encountered. It was a calm, endless ocean. And what they had seen so far was merely a ripple on its surface. She pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, a gesture of thoughtful composure that did little to hide the gravity of her expression. Her voice was crisp and formal, cutting through the lingering tension. Rias, Sona began, her tone clipped, I trust you have a very good explanation. My sensors detect An energy spike in your territory on par with a leader class being, followed by the complete and utter cessation of a fallen angel's life force. And now, I find this individual, her sharp violet eyes locked with Naruto's calm golden ones, sitting in your clubhouse. An individual whose power I cannot even begin to quantify. Explain. Now. Rias rose to her feet, her own regal aura flaring to meet Sona's. The friendly rivalry between the two heiresses was, for a moment, forgotten, replaced by the instinctual possessiveness of two queens who had just stumbled upon the same, impossibly valuable treasure. The air crackled with unspoken challenge. Naruto leaned back into the couch, crossing his arms. He looked from Rias to Sona, a faint, wry smile touching his lips for the first time that night. It seemed he had stumbled out of one world of politics and rivalry and landed feet first in another. Some things, it seemed, were truly universal. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Grimoire Gambit. The air in the occult research club room was thick enough to taste, a heavy cocktail of crimson demonic energy and crisp, intellectual teal. Rias Grimoire and Sona Citri stood opposite each other, 2 queens surveying a newly discovered territory that had just manifested in the form of a blonde teenager in tattered clothes. Their peerages stood behind them, silent and tense, echoes of their master's dispositions. Rias's group was a collection of proud, individualistic warriors. Sona's, arrayed with perfect, almost military precision, was a single, cohesive unit. Naruto remained on the couch. An island of calm in a sea of unspoken tension. He took a slow sip of the tea Akino had poured for him. It was surprisingly good. He'd never had anything like it. It was fragrant, with a hint of samet. Hing spicy and warm that settled deep in his chest. He watched the two heiresses over the rim of the delicate porcelain cup, his sage-enhanced senses picking up on every subtle shift in their energy, every flicker of emotion in their eyes. This is my territory, Sona, Rias said, her voice dangerously smooth. The presence of an unknown power falls under my jurisdiction. I am handling it. Handling it. Sona countered, pushing her glasses up with a single, precise finger. From my perspective, it appears you've brought a stray thermonuclear device into your clubhouse and offered it a cup of tea. His energy signature is unstable and unlike anything in the archives of the House of Citri. He is a potential threat to the peace of this town, a peace that I am primarily responsible for maintaining through my authority as student council president. He is not a threat, Rias insisted, glancing at Naruto. He is a guest. A guest who single-handedly erased a fallen angel and nullified Akin's holy lightning without breaking a sweat, Sona retorted, her logic unassailable. Forgive me if I don't simply take your word for it. The balance between the factions is fragile. A power of this magnitude, unaffiliated and unknown, is not a guest. It is a crisis. Sona then turned her full attention to Naruto, bypassing Rias entirely. Her violet eyes were sharp, analytical, like a surgeon examining a patient. Naruto Uzumaki. Rias has likely offered you a place in her peerage, an appeal to emotion and a promise of family. I will make you a different offer. A logical one. The House of Citri values order, strategy, and merit. Your power is an anomaly, but it is undeniably effective. Under my guidance, you could be integrated into our system. I can provide you with knowledge, resources, and a clear, defined purpose. Your abilities could be honed, cataloged, and used with maximum efficiency for the stability of the underworld. Join my peerage. We will give you structure. It was a cold pitch, but a compelling one. It spoke of logic, of purpose, of a place in a grand, ordered machine. It was an appeal to an intelligent mind. Naruto set his cup down with a soft click. He offered Sona a small, disarming smile. Thanks for the offer, glasses san, but I'm going to have to pass on that one, too. Sona's eyebrow twitched, the only outward sign of her surprise. May I ask why? Because your structure sounds a lot like a cage, Naruto said, his tone still light but with an undercurrent of steel. And your purpose sounds like a job description written by someone else. I already told Rias. I'm not a piece to be played. I'm not looking for a new master, no matter how logical their sales pitch is. His gaze swept over both of them, his smile fading into a look of sincere, almost weary understanding. Look, I get it. You both see something you think you can use. A new knight, a new rook, a get-out-of-jail-free card. But you're not seeing me. I'm not a weapon. I'm a person. I just got here. I don't know the rules. I don't know the players, and frankly, I don't care about your faction politics. All I want is to figure out where I am and if I can get home. And until then, I'd appreciate it if everyone would stop trying to put a collar on me. His words hung in the air, a simple, powerful declaration of self that cut through all their posturing and political maneuvering. He wasn't playing their game. He wasn't even on the same board. Sona stared at him for a long moment, her sharp mind processing this new variable. He wasn't motivated by power, or status, or belonging. He was motivated by a fierce, intractable sense of self. It was illogical. It was inefficient. And it was strangely respectable. I see, she said finally, her composure returning. She gave Rias a curt nod. Very well, Rias. He is in your territory. For now. But if his presence causes any disruption, I will hold you directly responsible. She turned back to Naruto. Uzumaki-san. My offer stands. Should you ever decide that freedom is simply another word for being alone. With a final, sharp look, Sona and her queen, Tsubaki Shinra, vanished in their teal magic circle, leaving a profound silence in their wake. Issei finally let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Whoa. She's intense. Rias's shoulders sagged slightly, the regal tension draining from her. She sank onto the couch. Her expression a mixture of frustration and desperation. She had failed. Her offer of family had been rejected. Sona's offer of purpose had been rejected. This boy, this impossible enigma, was unreachable. Akino refilled Naruto's cup, her movements graceful and deliberate. You are truly one of a kind, Naruto-kun, she murmured, her voice a low purr. To turn down not one, but two great heiresses in a single evening. Most men would sell their souls for such an opportunity. My soul's not for sale, Naruto replied quietly, watching Rias. He could see the despair clouding her features. This was more than just being denied a powerful new servant. There was a deeper pain there, a fear that had nothing to do with him. He leaned forward slightly. Rias, he said, using her first name for the first time. Her head snapped up. Her blue-green eyes meeting his. This isn't just about adding a new member to your club, is it? Sona was wrong. You're not looking at me like I'm a thermonuclear device. You're looking at me like I'm a key. Rias flinched as if he had read the deepest, most secret page of her diary. She looked away, her fiery hair shielding her face. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Naruto said gently, but with an insistence that wouldn't be denied. I've seen that look before. It's the look of someone who's trapped. Who's willing to do anything to find a way out. So, what is it? What cage are you in that has you so desperate you'd try to recruit a complete stranger you just met? The question was a direct shot to the heart of the matter. Kiba and Kaneko shifted uncomfortably. Akino's smile became strained, a fragile mask over a deep well of shared sorrow. Rias was silent for a full minute. The ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner of the room was the only sound. Finally, she took a shuddering breath and looked at him, her prideful mask crumbling to reveal the vulnerable young woman beneath. You're right, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I am in a cage. A beautiful, gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. I am the heiress to the house of Grimoire. And as such, my life is not my own. My future was decided for me the moment I was born. She explained. Her voice growing stronger with a bitter fire as she spoke. She told him of the devastating losses the devils had suffered in the Great War, of the catastrophic decline in the population of pure-blooded devils. To preserve the noble bloodlines, arranged marriages were not just common, they were essential. And she, Rias Grimoire, was engaged to be married. His name is Riser Phoenix, she said. The name dripping from her lips like poison. He is the third son of the great house of Phoenix, a clan known for their special ability. Immortality, Akino clarified, her voice laced with disgust. The Phoenix clan possesses incredible powers of regeneration. They can recover from almost any wound. It makes them arrogant. And it makes Riser the most arrogant of them all. He's a first-class creep. Issei burst out, unable to contain himself. I saw him once when he visited. He treats Bushu, President Rias, like she's already one of his possessions. He touched her hair and he's just the worst. Quote. Rias gave Issei a weak, grateful smile before continuing. In the eyes of Devil Society, it is a perfect match. A union between the power of destruction of the Grimoire clan and the immortality of the Phoenix clan. It would produce powerful heirs and strengthen the Devil faction. No one cares what I want. No one cares that I find him repulsive. That he's a lecherous, prideful fool who sees me as nothing more than a trophy. The contract was signed. My fate was sealed. She looked at Naruto, her eyes pleading. There was one concession my brother, Seers X Lucifer, one of the 4 great Satans, was able to grant me. I could choose to fight for my freedom in an official rating game. My peerage against his. If I win, the engagement is nullified. But if I lose, I must marry him immediately. Naruto listened, his expression hardening. He knew this story. The Hyuga clan, with their caged bird seal. Powerful bloodlines treating their own members like property for the good of the clan. A system that valued power and lineage over the will of the individual. He had fought to tear that system down. So you're looking for a way to win, he concluded. You need more power on your side. Riser is not just a high-class devil, Rias said, her voice heavy with despair. He already has a full peerage. 15 pieces. All of them battle-hardened. I have only been a king for a short time. I have only my queen, 1 knight, 1 rook, and 1 bishop who is currently away. We are outnumbered and outmatched. His power of regeneration makes him nearly unbeatable in a war of attrition. Which is what a rating game is. We've tried simulations. We've planned strategies. We have no chance of winning. She finally broke, burying her face in her hands. A single, frustrated sob escaped her. I am so tired of this. I just want to be free. Kaneko, in a rare display of open affection, moved to Rias's side and placed a small hand on her shoulder. Akeno stood behind the couch. Her own eyes glistening with unshed tears of sympathy for her friend, her king. Naruto felt a familiar fire ignite in his gut. The fire that had driven him to save Gaara, to bring back Tsunade. To never give up on Sasuke. It was the fire of a promise keeper, a chain breaker. He looked at this girl, this powerful devil princess who was on the verge of tears, and he didn't see an aristocrat from another world. He saw a friend in trouble. There's always a chance, he said, his voice cutting through her despair. Rias looked up, hope warring with doubt in her eyes. But you said, you wouldn't be a chess piece. I won't, Naruto confirmed. I won't join your peerage. I won't become a devil. But that doesn't mean I won't help a friend who's being bullied. He stood up, a new energy about him. This Riser guy. He thinks he can just take what he wants because he's strong. He thinks he can decide your life for you. That's the kind of thing that really pisses me off. A spark of hope ignited in Rias's chest. You would help us. I'll do more than help, Naruto declared. I'll fight. He paused, then looked at her peerage. But first, you're right. I'm an unknown factor. And if you're going to bet your future on me, you deserve to know exactly what you're getting. He grinned, a wide, confident, foxy grin that transformed his face, chasing away the weariness and replacing it with the untamable energy of a maelstrom. So, how about it? A little test, like your queen suggested. Your whole team against me. Let's see what you've got. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The despair was gone, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and disbelief. All of us against you? Kiba asked, his hand drifting to his side instinctively. Are you serious? Deadly serious, Naruto confirmed. His eyes glinting. Don't hold back. If you can't even land a hit on me, you'll know you can trust me to handle one arrogant firebird. Rias stared at him, her heart pounding. The sheer, unshakable confidence radiating from him was intoxicating. It was a force of nature in itself. For the first time in a long time, she felt a genuine flicker of hope. She stood up, her regal composure returning. But this time it was fueled by a newfound fire, not just inherited pride. Very well, she said, her voice ringing with authority. Akeno, prepare the training field. Akeno bowed. Her smile now genuine and filled with a thrilling anticipation. With pleasure, Bushu. The world dissolved in a wave of crimson energy. When it reformed, they were no longer in the cozy clubhouse but in a vast, open dimension. A featureless plain stretched out under an artificial twilight sky. It was a pocket dimension, a personal training ground for the Grimoire peerage. Rias and her Amelie stood together on one side of the plain. Kiba had summoned a sleek, European-style sword, its blade humming with power. Kaneko had slipped on a pair of knuckle dusters, her small frame radiating an aura of immense physical might. Akeno floated a few feet off the ground, golden crackles of holy lightning dancing between her fingers. Rias herself was surrounded by a swirling aura of crimson N.D. black energy, the legendary power of destruction. Naruto stood opposite them, perhaps 100 yards away. He was alone, still in his tattered clothes, looking perfectly relaxed. "Ready when you are," he called out. His voice echoing in the empty space. "Kiba, you're first," Rias commanded. "Gauge his speed." "My pleasure," Kiba said with a charming smile, though his eyes were sharp with focus. In the next instant, he was gone. He moved with supernatural speed, appearing behind Naruto in a blur of motion, his sword arcing towards Naruto's neck in a silent, deadly slash. It was the signature move of a knight, devil's speed. To the others, it looked like a guaranteed hit. But for Naruto, in sage mode, it was like watching a fish swim through honey. He didn't even turn around. He simply tilted his head to the side. The humming blade sliced through the empty air where his neck had been a fraction of a second before. Kiba's eyes widened. Before he could recover or launch a second attack, Naruto moved. He spun on his heel. His leg sweeping out in a low kick. It wasn't flashy, just brutally fast and efficient. Kiba, his momentum still carrying him forward, had no time to block. The kick connected with his ankle. And with a sharp crack, Kiba was thrown off balance, his sword clattering to the ground as he tumbled head over heels, landing in a heap 10 feet away. "You're fast," Naruto commented. Not even looking at the downed knight. "But you put too much weight on your lead foot. It telegraphs your attack." Kiba sat up, clutching his ankle, his face a mask of disbelief. He hadn't just been beaten. He'd been analyzed and dismantled in less than a second. "Kaneko," Rias said, her voice tight. The small girl didn't need to be told twice. She shot forward, the ground cracking under her feet with each step. She wasn't as fast as Kiba, but the raw power she projected was immense. She drew her arm back and threw a punch aimed squarely at Naruto's chest, a blow that could shatter solid steel. Naruto didn't dodge. He didn't counter. He simply raised his right hand, palm open, and met her fist. The impact was silent, yet the shockwave it produced was anything but. A visible ripple of force exploded outwards, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and debris. Rias and Akeno had to brace themselves against the gale. Kaneko's punch, a strike of pure, unadulterated strength, had been stopped dead. Her fist was pressed into Naruto's palm, and he hadn't moved a single inch. He hadn't even braced himself. He just stood there, as immovable as a mountain. Kaneko stared, her golden eyes wide with shock. She poured more power into her punch, her muscles straining, but it was like punching a hole in the ocean. Her strength just vanished into him. "Good power," Naruto said, his voice calm. "But you rely on it too much. True strength isn't just about how hard you can hit. It's about the foundation you're standing on." With a gentle push, he sent Kaneko stumbling backward, her balance completely broken. She landed softly, looking at her fists as if they belonged to someone else. Akeno floated higher, a serious expression replacing her usual smile. "It seems it's my turn. I won't be as gentle." The sky above her darkened. Clouds swirled into existence, and from them descended a torrent of golden lightning bolts, a holy tempest designed to smite any devilish foe. It was a beautiful and terrifying display of power. "Holy lightning!" she cried, directing the storm down upon Naruto. Naruto simply looked up at the descending wrath. He brought his hands together in a single, unfamiliar seal. Wind style. Great breakthrough. He took a deep breath and exhaled a hurricane. A massive, invisible wave of wind erupted from his mouth, rushing upwards to meet the lightning storm. The two forces collided. The focused, divine spears of lightning were caught in the chaotic, unstoppable gale. The bolts were torn apart, shredded, and dispersed into harmless sparks before they could even get close to the ground. In a matter of seconds, Akeno's ultimate attack had been unraveled by a single breath. Akeno drifted back down to the ground, her face pale. He had not just blocked her attack. He had shown its fundamental weakness to a superior element, executed with a level of mastery she couldn't fathom. Now, only Rias was left. She stood amidst her defeated peerage, her crimson aura flaring violently. There was no fear in her eyes, only a fierce, burning determination. She was the king. She would not back down. So, It comes down to you, Naruto said, turning his full attention to her. The power of destruction. Show me. With pleasure, Ria snarled. She thrust her hands forward, unleashing a massive, swirling sphere of chaotic red and black energy. It was not an element. It was pure annihilation. A power that erased matter from existence. It flew at Naruto, consuming the very ground it passed over. Naruto didn't try to block it. He didn't try to counter it. He simply started walking towards it. Naruto, no! Ria screamed, her heart seizing with terror. That power could erase anything. Even him. But he didn't stop. As the sphere of destruction was about to engulf him, a change came over him. A faint, golden aura flared to life around his body. The pupils of his eyes became horizontal bars, the sign that he was perfectly in tune with the natural energy of the world. The power of destruction hit him, and Ria squeezed her eyes shut, unable to watch. But there was no scream. No sound of annihilation. She cautiously opened her eyes. What she saw defied all logic. Naruto was standing in the very heart of her attack, untouched. The swirling, chaotic energy was parting around him, flowing past him like water around a stone in a river. He wasn't nullifying it, he was simply immune to it. He walked through the storm of erasure as if it were a mild spring breeze. He emerged from the other side of the dissipating attack and stopped directly in front of her. So close she could see the strange, bar-like pupils of his golden eyes. He raised a hand and gently poked her on the forehead with 2 fingers, just as Itachi had once done to Sasuke. Checkmate, he said softly. Ria stumbled backward, her power fizzling out completely. Her peerage, now recovered enough to stand, could only stare in utter, reverent silence. He had defeated all of them, their strongest techniques. Without taking a single step back, without showing a hint of strain. He hadn't just won. He had proven that they existed on entirely different planes of reality. The confidence that flooded Rias's soul was absolute. It was more than hope. It was certainty. With him, they couldn't lose. Back in the clubhouse, the mood was entirely different. The shock had worn off, replaced by a buzzing, excited energy. Issei was firing questions at Naruto a mile a minute, while Kiba and Kaneko watched him with a newfound, profound respect. Akino's interest had deepened into something far more intense and personal. Naruto, for his part, had found a quiet corner of the room to sit and meditate. He needed to process the fight, his new allies, this strange world. He closed his eyes and began to draw in the natural energy around him. It felt different from the energy of his home world. Thinner, with those strange undercurrents of holy and demonic power. It was like trying to breathe through a filter. As he sank deeper into his meditative state, expanding his senses, he felt the familiar pulse of the planet. The life of the trees, the flow of the water, the quiet hum of the earth. But then, he felt something else. A flicker. A wrongness. He pushed his senses further, past the town, past the country, past the atmosphere of the planet itself. He reached into the void, the space between spaces. And there it was. A cold spot. A void in the fabric of existence. It was not an absence of energy, but an energy of absence. A conscious, hungry nothingness that seemed to stare back at him from the edge of reality. It was a faint, infinitesimal pinprick of anti-existence, but its malevolence was ancient and absolute. Kurama stirred within him. Kit, what is that? It feels empty. Naruto finished the thought. A shiver running down his spine despite his control. He withdrew his senses, his eyes snapping open. What was that? A creature. A place. He dismissed it as a strange anomaly of this new dimension. A cosmic quirk he didn't have time to investigate. He had more immediate problems. As if on cue, the air in the center of the room grew thick and hot. The scent of sulfur and burning feathers filled the clubhouse. A brilliant orange magical circle, emblazoned with the crest of a phoenix, erupted on the floor. From the heart of the flames, a man emerged. He was handsome in a conventional, arrogant way. With blonde hair and a flamboyant, noble-style suit. He carried himself with an air of supreme self-importance, his eyes scanning the room as if he were a king surveying his property. Behind him, a full complement of 15 women in maid outfits appeared, his peerage. Rias, my darling. The man boomed, his voice oozing a possessiveness that made Naruto's teeth ache. Your beloved riser has arrived. I grew tired of waiting, so I decided to come and collect my sweet bride myself. Rias went rigid, her face draining of color. Riser. You are not welcome here. Riser Phoenix simply laughed. A condescending, unpleasant sound. Nonsense, my dear. Everywhere you are is my home now. His gaze swept past her peerage, dismissing them as furniture, before landing on Naruto. His eyes narrowed, sensing the immense, coiled power residing within the blonde stranger. And who is this? Riser sneered, his lip curling in distaste. Don't tell me you've picked up a dirty human stray, Rias. You should know better than to play with your food. Before Rias could respond, Riser started walking towards her, his arms outstretched. Come now, my little Grimoire. It is time to go. We have a wedding to prepare for. He reached out to grab her arm. But his hand never made it. A calloused, warm hand clamped down on his wrist, stopping it cold. The grip was like iron. Riser looked down in shock to see Naruto standing between him and Rias, his expression placid, but his eyes holding a dangerous, cold light. She said you're not welcome, Naruto said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable weight. That means you should probably leave. Riser's face contorted with rage. You dare touch me, you filthy worm. Let go before I burn you to ash. Flames erupted around Riser's body. The signature fire of the Phoenix clan. The heat was intense, but Naruto didn't even flinch. I don't think so, Naruto said calmly. Insolence. Riser roared, and tried to pull his hand away, but he couldn't budge it. It was like being held by the mountain itself. How could this be? Suddenly, a calm, powerful voice echoed through the room, seeming to come from everywhere at once. It was Sears X Lucifer. That is enough, Riser. Quote. A communication circle with the Grimoire crest appeared in the air. I understand your impatience, but you will not lay a hand on my sister against her will. The rules of the rating game are absolute. Quote. Riser extinguished his flames, scowling. Lord Lucifer. This stray has interfered. He has laid his hands on me. And he has also garnered my sister's hope, Sears X's voice replied. A note of deep interest in his tone. A new arrangement has been proposed. The rating game will proceed as scheduled. However, Rias has chosen a champion to fight on her behalf. Riser stared, then burst into laughter. A champion? You mean this human? He will fight me and my entire peerage alone. This is a joke. It's no joke, Naruto said, finally releasing Riser's wrist. He looked the arrogant devil dead in the eye. I'll fight you. But we're changing the stakes. Changing the stakes. Riser scoffed. And what could a piece of trash like you possibly have to offer? My terms are simple. Naruto stated, his voice ringing with absolute authority. I fight your entire peerage. By myself. If you win, Rias honors the engagement. No tricks, no delays. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. But if I win, the engagement is over. Permanently. Rias is free from you and any obligation to your house. And I walk away, owing no one anything. You get your shot at Rias. And I get to make sure a bully like you gets what he deserves. The sheer audacity of the proposal left everyone, including Riser and the disembodied voice of Sears X, momentarily silent. Riser looked at this lone boy offering to fight his entire immortal legion and saw only the height of foolish pride. An easy, humiliating victory that would put Rias in her place for good. You have a deal, you suicidal fool. Riser crowed, a malicious grin spreading across his face. I accept your ridiculous terms. I will enjoy tearing you apart in front of my bride-to-be. The terms are set, Sears X's voice announced. A hint of something unreadable, perhaps excitement, in his tone. The rating game will commence in 10 days. Prepare yourselves. The communication circle vanished. Riser gave Rias a final, proprietary smirk. I look forward to our wedding night, my love. With another flash of fiery light, he and his peerage were gone. The room was quiet once more. Rias turned to Naruto. Her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. Naruto, what have you done? His entire peerage, he's immortal. Naruto just turned to her and gave her that same, confident, foxy grin. Don't worry, he said. His voice filled with a certainty that was more calming than any complex strategy. Immortality just means I get to beat him up for longer. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Checkmate, Firebird. The 10 days leading up to the rating game passed in a strange blur of nervous energy and profound, unnerving calm. The nervous energy belonged entirely to the Grimoire peerage. The calm belonged to Naruto. Rias had tried to bury him in data, projecting holographic images of Riser's peerage, detailing their strengths, weaknesses, and preferred tactics. Naruto had listened politely for about 5 minutes, nodded, and then gone to the kitchen to see if they had any instant ramen. Kiba had offered to spar with him daily, to help him acclimate to the speed of Devil Knights. Naruto had simply smiled, patted him on the shoulder, and told him to rest up. Akeno, in her own unique way, tried to prepare him by explaining the nuances of demonic power versus his natural energy, her explanations trailing off into suggestive remarks about private tutoring sessions. Naruto had absorbed the information with an almost academic interest before changing the subject. Their anxiety was a tangible thing. They were betting everything, Rias's freedom, their collective future, on an outsider they barely knew. An outsider who, despite his unbelievable power, seemed to be taking the threat of an Amor. Tall Devil and his 15 battle-hardened servants with all the seriousness of a trip to the grocery store. Yet, his calm was infectious. When Rias would start to pace, her mind consumed by worst-case scenarios, Naruto would interrupt her thoughts by asking a simple question about her favorite food or a happy memory. When Kiba's hand would stray to the hilt of a phantom sword, Naruto would challenge him to a card game. When Kaneko would retreat into a stoic silence, he would sit beside her, not speaking, just sharing a chocolate bar. He wasn't training. He wasn't strategizing. He was simply being there. He was anchoring them. He was a mountain of tranquility in the face of their storm, and slowly, without realizing it, they began to lean on him. Their fear didn't vanish, but it was tempered by a growing, irrational faith in the quiet confidence of the blonde enigma they had taken into their home. They had seen what he could do to them. The thought of what he might do to Riser's famously arrogant peerage was a tiny, fiercely guarded spark of hope. On the 10th day, the call came. A grimoire-crested magic circle glowed on the floor of the clubhouse. A calm, female voice, devoid of emotion, echoed from it. The rating game is about to begin. All participants, please step into the circle. It was Graphia Lucifuge, Sears X's queen and the ultimate arbiter of the games. Rias looked at Naruto. Her blue-green eyes wide with 1,000 unasked questions. Her entire peerage stood behind her, their expressions a mixture of grim determination and hope. Naruto gave her a reassuring nod and a thumbs up. That foxy grin plastered on his face. Don't worry. I'll have this wrapped up before dinner. Promise me you'll have a big meal ready when I get back. Taking a deep breath, Rias nodded back. A genuine smile touching her lips for the first time that day. It's a promise. Naruto stepped into the circle alone. The world dissolved in a gut-wrenching lurch of crimson light and twisting space. When reality reasserted itself, he was standing on the manicured grounds of a perfect, life-sized replica of Kuo Academy. The sky above was an artificial, perpetually twilit canvas. This was the arena. A battlefield of their choosing, designed to give Riser the home field advantage. Across the quad, standing on the steps of the main school building, was Riser Phoenix in his full peerage. He was dressed in a gaudy red and gold suit, a preening, arrogant smirk on his face. His 15 pieces, his queen, 2 rooks, 2 knights, 2 bishops, and 8 pawns, were arrayed behind him like a collection of porcelain dolls. Their expressions uniform and smug. Behold, my sweet Rias. Riser's voice boomed, amplified by the arena's magic. He was addressing the observers, the thousands of DxD in the underworld watching through magical projections. Witness the foolishness of your chosen champion. One pathetic human against the might of the immortal house of Phoenix. This will not be a battle, it will be an execution. Graphia's disembodied voice cut through his theatrics, cold and impartial. The rating game between Riser Phoenix and Rias Grimoire has now begun. The rules are simple. To win, one side must either defeat all members of the opposing peerage or force the opposing king to surrender. Let the battle commence. Riser laughed, a high, grating sound. Pawns. Go. Overwhelm him. Show this filth the futility of his struggle. His 8 pawn pieces, a group of young women with swords and spears, shot forward in a coordinated charge, their movements swift and practiced. They fanned out, intending to encircle and overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Naruto watched their approach, his expression unreadable. He didn't move from his spot. He simply brought his hands together in a cross-shaped seal. This old trick. Huh. Fine by me. Shadow Clone Jutsu. There was a series of loud puffs, and the air was instantly filled with thick white smoke. Riser's pawns skidded to a halt, their eyes wide with confusion. When the smoke cleared, they were no longer facing one Naruto. They were facing an army. 100 identical copies of Naruto Uzumaki stood on the field, each one with the same confident grin. Cracking their knuckles in unison. A stunned silence fell over the arena. In the Grimoire viewing room, Rias and her peerage stared, dumbfounded. He can multiply. Issei stammered. Riser's jaw dropped. What trickery is this? They must be illusions. Illusions, huh? The Naruto in the front said, then glanced over his shoulder. You guys hear that? He thinks we're illusions. Let's show him how real we are. The army of clones roared in agreement and surged forward. It wasn't a battle, it was a harvest. The 8 pawns were instantly swamped. One was taken WN by a simple but perfectly executed leg sweep. Another was sent flying by an uppercut. 2 more were hit from opposite sides by a pair of clones who seemed to be enjoying themselves immensely. The Lones moved with a level of coordination that was impossible for a normal team, their shared mind allowing for flawless feints, blocks, and strikes. From the back of the clone army, one Naruto cupped his hands. A swirling ball of blue chakra, a standard Rasengan, formed in his palm. Make a hole, he yelled. The other clones parted instantly, creating a perfect lane. The clone with the Rasengan SP rinted forward and slammed it into the chest of the lead pawn, sending her spinning into 2 of her teammates, knocking all 3 out of the fight. Pop, pop, pop. As the clones took minor hits or completed their tasks, they vanished in puffs of smoke, their experiences and remaining chakra flowing back to the original. It was the most efficient form of combat imaginable. 8 of Lord Riser's pawns, retired, Graphia's voice announced. A bare hint of surprise in her monotone. In less than 30 seconds, half of Riser's forces had been eliminated by what appeared to be a single technique. Riser's face was turning a satisfying shade of purple. Useless girls. Revel. He shrieked. A young girl with blonde, drill-like pigtails, one of his bishops, stepped forward. Incinerate those copies. Revel began to chant. And a massive fireball formed above her, but before she could launch it, a Naruto clone appeared directly behind her, a hand gently chopping the back of her neck. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed. Another clone appeared beside Riser's other bishop, catching her in a simple sleeper hold. She went limp in seconds. 2 of Lord Riser's bishops, retired, Graphia reported. Knights. Rooks. What are you waiting for? Kill him. Riser screamed, his composure completely shattered. His 4 heaviest hitters charged. The 2 knights, armored women with immense swords, blurred into motion, attempting to use their speed to cut through the clones and reach the original. The 2 rooks, muscular figures radiating brute strength, simply plowed forward, sending clones flying with every swing of their fists. The real Naruto finally moved. He met the 2 charging rooks head-on. The first threw a haymaker that could dent steel. Naruto caught the fist in his open palm, his feet not even sliding on the grass. He squeezed, and the rook cried out as the bones in her hand fractured. He spun, using her own momentum to throw her into the path of the second rook, and the 2 RFUL pieces crashed to the ground in a tangled heap. Meanwhile, the 2 knights found their speed matched and surpassed by a dozen clones who harried them from every angle. One knight, a woman named Cyrus, was a blur of motion. Her blade a silver arc of death. She cut through clone after clone, but for every one she dispatched, 2 more took its place. She was fast, but she couldn't be everywhere at once. A clone slid under her guard, kicking her feet out from under her. As she fell, another clone appeared above her, driving a powerful axe kick into her solar plexus. The air rushed out of her lungs in a pained gasp. 2 rooks and 2 knights, retired, Graphia announced. The field was now clear, save for the original Naruto, Riser, and his queen, a tall, beautiful woman with purple hair named Yubeluna. Riser was hyperventilating, his eyes wild with disbelief and fury. He had lost 14 of his 15 pieces in under 5 minutes. His entire strategy, his peerage, his pride, dismantled with casual, almost insulting ease. Yubeluna. He screeched. Kill him. Erase him. I don't care how, just do it. Yubeluna nodded, her expression grim. She floated into the air, her hands held high. A terrifying amount of demonic energy began to gather between her palms, a mixture of explosive and air-type magic. It grew into a massive, condensed sphere of volatile power, crackling like a small sun. It was a bomb. A last-ditch effort powerful enough to level the entire school grounds. In the viewing room, Rias gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. That's a queen's ultimate attack. A high-density magic bomb. He has to dodge it. But Naruto didn't dodge. He stood his ground, watching the sphere of death grow, a curious look on his face. He dismissed his last remaining clones, standing alone on the field once more. This is the end, you insolent human. Ubeluna screamed, thrusting her hands forward. Disappear. The bomb shot downwards, not with the speed of lightning, but with the inexorable, terrifying momentum of an asteroid. It hit the ground where Naruto stood, and the world turned white. A blinding flash was followed by a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the pocket dimension. A massive dome of explosive energy expanded outwards, incinerating the grass, the trees, even the asphalt of the parking lot. It was a vision of absolute destruction. The ICAL broadcast flickered from the sheer energy output. The Grimoire peerage stared at the screen, their hearts frozen in their chests. Issei was white as a sheet. Kaniko's hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Even Akino's usual seductive smile was gone, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. The explosion subsided, leaving behind a massive, blackened crater, smoke billowing from its depths. At the center, there was nothing. No sign of Naruto. Riser Phoenix began to laugh. It started as a chuckle, then grew into a full-blown, hysterical roar of triumph. Did you see that, Rias, my love? Did you see? Your champion has been vaporized. Reduced to cosmic dust. He is nothing. Now you are mine. But in the Grimoire viewing room, Kaniko, whose senses were the sharpest, tilted her head. Wait, she whispered. I can still feel him. His energy, it hasn't weakened. It's growing. On the field, a voice cut through Riser's laughter, calm and completely unconcerned. Hey, was that supposed to hurt? Riser's laughter died in his throat. He and a stunned Ubeluna stared at the center of the crater. The smoke was beginning to part, revealing a light. Not the light of an explosion, but a steady, brilliant golden glow. A figure walked out of the smoke, and the collective breath of every devil watching the broadcast hitched. It was Naruto, completely unharmed. But he was transformed. He was cloaked in a shroud of incandescent golden chakra that burned like a miniature sun, licking off his body like roaring flames. Black, intricate markings covered his form, and his eyes glowed with an intensity that was both terrifying and divine. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a god of power, a being of pure, unassailable energy. The Nine Tails chakra mode. My turn, he said, his voice now layered, echoing with the deep rumble of Kurama's own. He vanished. Before Ubeluna could even register his disappearance, he was in front of her, suspended in midair. He didn't punch. He didn't kick. He simply reached out and tapped her on the forehead. The moment his finger, coated in that golden chakra, made contact, her eyes went wide with shock. Her demonic energy was violently neutralized. Her flight magic sputtering and dying. She dropped from the sky like a stone, landing unconscious in a heap. Lord Riser's queen, retired, Graphia's voice announced, and this time, the shock was unmistakable. Now, it was just the two of them. Naruto, a radiant golden deity, and Riser Phoenix, a preening nobleman whose entire world had just collapsed around him. No, impossible. Riser stammered, stumbling backward. What are you? Just a guy who really hates bullies, Naruto said, the golden shroud receding, though the immense pressure of his presence remained. Rage finally overcame fear in Riser's mind. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you are. I am Riser Phoenix. I am immortal. You cannot kill me. I will regenerate from any wound. Flames of brilliant orange erupted around his body. And a pair of fiery wings sprouted from his back. He shot forward, his fist cocked back, wreathed in fire. I will burn you from existence. He threw a punch. Naruto caught it effortlessly. Riser threw another with his other hand. Naruto caught that one, too. Riser roared and tried to headbutt him, his whole body now a raging inferno. Naruto didn't even flinch as the flames washed over him. His Sage Mode skin was more than durable enough to handle it. Is that all? Naruto asked, his voice laced with disappointment. This immortality of yours, it's made you weak. You've never had to train. Never had to push yourself, never had to risk anything. You just fall back on your regeneration like a crutch. You're not a warrior. You're just a spoiled child who's never been told, no. With a flick of his wrists, he broke Riser's grip and sent him stumbling back. I'll show you, Riser screamed, tears of impotent rage streaming down his face. He unleashed a torrent of fire. A massive wave of golden flames that washed over Naruto. When it cleared, Naruto was still standing there, his tattered clothes slightly more singed, but otherwise completely unharmed. My power is regeneration. My power is life itself. Riser shrieked, preparing another blast. No, it's not, Naruto said, his voice turning ice cold. He held up a hand, and a small, black orb, no bigger than a marble, formed in his palm. A truth-seeking orb. It radiated an aura of profound finality. This is power. The power to create, and the power to erase. Your little parlor trick is nothing. He let the orb dissipate. He wasn't going to use it. That would be overkill. This wasn't about killing Riser. It was about breaking him. He walked forward slowly. Riser, in a fit of pure panic, threw everything he had. Fireballs. Streams of flame, explosive blasts. Naruto walked through all of it, the attacks parting around him as if he were a ghost. He didn't block. He didn't dodge. He just walked. He stopped directly in front of the trembling, horrified devil. Riser had exhausted himself. His flames sputtered, his face pale with terror. Please, Riser whimpered. Mercy. Naruto looked at him, not with anger, but with a deep, profound pity. You wanted a fight, he said softly. But you don't even know what that means. He drew back his right fist. There was no chakra gathering, no golden glow, no special technique. And he threw a simple, straightforward punch. It connected with Riser's jaw. The sound was not a loud crack, but a dull, sickening thud. Riser's eyes went blank. His body, lifted clean off its feet by the sheer force of the blow, flew backward like a cannonball. He tumbled through the air for what felt like an eternity before crashing into the wall of the school building 100 yards away. The impact shattering the concrete and leaving a spiderweb of cracks. He slid down the wall and lay still, a broken puppet with its strings cut. Unconscious. Defeated. Silence. A deep, profound silence filled the arena. Naruto stood in the center of the field of devastation, his arm still slightly extended. He lowered it slowly and let out a small breath. After a long moment, Graphia's voice returned, carrying a new, almost imperceptible note of awe. Lord Riser has been rendered unconscious. All pieces of the Phoenix Peerage are retired. The winner of this rating game is Rias Grimori. In the viewing room, there was a split second of stunned silence before the room erupted. Issei was screaming with joy. Kiba was laughing, a wide, genuine grin on his face. Akino and Kaneko were hugging a sobbing Rias, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming, crushing relief. She was free. He had done it. He had fought an entire army alone and won. The world of the arena shimmered. And a single figure materialized in front of Naruto. It was Sears X Lucifer, the current Crimson Satan. He had Rias's kind eyes but carried an aura of power so immense it made the very air feel thick and heavy. He was not observing from afar anymore. He had come in person. Sears X looked from the unconscious form of Riser slumped against the wall to the lone boy standing in the middle of the cratered battlefield. He took in the scorch marks, the signs of battle, and then looked at Naruto, who didn't have a single scratch on him. Naruto Uzumaki, Sears X said, his voice calm but filled with an unreadable depth. That was, without a doubt, the single most astounding display of individual power I have ever witnessed. He was all talk, Naruto replied with a shrug, seemingly unimpressed by the presence of one of the most powerful beings in this world. Are we done here? I was promised dinner. Sears X let out a small chuckle, a surprisingly warm sound. Yes. We are done. You have honored your side of the agreement perfectly. He grew serious again. You possess a power that defies all our understanding. You are not a devil, angel, or fallen. You are something entirely new. The balance of this world, it has just been irrevocably shifted. The world can balance itself, Naruto said, turning to leave the arena. I just wanted to help my friend. A crimson light enveloped him. And he was back in the clubhouse. The moment he appeared, he was tackled by a flying form. He stumbled back, catching Rias as she wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest, her body shaking with silent, grateful sobs. Slowly, the rest of the peerage surrounded them. Kiba placed a respectful hand on his shoulder. Akino looked at him with an expression of pure, unmasked adoration. Kaneko stood close. Her usual stoicism gone, replaced by a soft, trusting look as she gently took the hem of his tattered shirt in her small hand. Issei just stood there, his eyes shining with hero worship. Naruto stood awkwardly for a moment, then slowly, hesitantly, wrapped his arms around Rias, patting her back gently. For the first time since he had arrived in this strange, chaotic world, amidst devils and fallen angels, he felt something familiar. He felt the warmth of a bond. The weight of a promise kept. He had come here lost and alone. But now, surrounded by this strange, mismatched family, he realized with a start, maybe he was finally home. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. An Angel's Plea and a Fallen's Plot. The victory feast was, in Naruto's humble opinion, the single greatest thing he had experienced in this new world. The Occult Research Club's lounge had been transformed. The low table was laden with a mountain of food so vast and varied it seemed to defy physics. Air was karage fried to a perfect golden brown, steaming bowls of sukiyaki, plates of delicate sushi, and, to Naruto's tear-jerking delight, a massive, custom-ordered pot of tonkatsu ramen so rich and fragrant it felt like a hug for his soul. Laughter, a sound that had been absent for weeks, echoed off the walls. Issei was regaling a skeptical Kiba and a stoic Kaneko with a wildly exaggerated, blow-by-blow account of the raiding game. Casting Naruto as a mythical hero of impossible proportions. Naruto, for his part, mostly ignored him, too busy demolishing his third bowl of ramen with a focus so intense it was almost meditative. Rias sat beside him, not eating much, but watching him with a soft, unguarded smile. The weight of the engagement had been lifted, and the change was profound. The regal mask of the Grimoire heiress had been replaced by the simple, radiant joy of a young woman given back her future. She would occasionally push a plate of food closer to him or refill his glass, small gestures of gratitude and affection that spoke volumes more than words ever could. Akino, seated on his other side, was far less subtle. She leaned against his arm, her voice a sultry purr as she pointed out the different dishes. You must try this, Naruto-kun. It's a specialty of mine. I do hope you find it satisfying. Every word was laced with a double meaning, every glance a smoldering invitation. Naruto, accustomed to a lifetime of social obliviousness but now armed with sage-like perception, navigated her advances with a practiced, friendly neutrality that only seemed to fuel her determination. He had fulfilled his promise. He had won. And in doing so, he had cemented his place not as a servant or a weapon, but as a treasured, if eccentric, member of their strange little family. The feeling was warm, comfortable, and terrifyingly fragile. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his gut, that it couldn't last. Peace was never a destination, it was just a moment to catch your breath. His senses, always active, picked them up first. 2 new energy signatures entering the school grounds. They felt sharp, focused, like finely honed blades. And they radiated a soft, golden luminescence that felt profoundly different from Akino's hybrid holy power. This was pure, undiluted, angelic. Kurama grumbled within him. Company, Kit. And they don't smell friendly. Naruto put his chopsticks down just as the door to the clubhouse creaked open. The laughter died. Everyone turned to see 2 young women standing in the doorway, their expressions cold and hard. One had vibrant, blue-purple haircut in a practical bob and carried a massive, cloth-wrapped sword on her back. The other had cheerful, auburn pigtails and a bright, almost forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Both wore simple, functional combat attire beneath long coats. The blue-haired one's eyes, a piercing shade of yellow, scanned the room. They lingered on Rias and her peerage with open disdain, then landed on Naruto. Her eyes narrowed. Demons, she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. And, something else. She wrinkled her nose. You reek of demonic energy, but it's mixed with something wild. Unnatural. Well, that's just rude, Naruto said, taking a sip of his tea. We were having dinner. We are not here for pleasantries, the girl stated. I am Zenobia Quarta. This is Irina Shido. We are agents of the church. Sent here on a mission from God. Rias stood up, her regal composure instantly returning. The church has no authority in this territory. This land is under the stewardship of the House of Grimoire. State your purpose, or leave. Our purpose is the recovery of holy property, Zenobia shot back, her hand resting on the hilt of her wrapped sword. 3 fragments of T. He legendary sword Excalibur have been stolen from our vaults. Our intelligence indicates they were brought here, to Kuo town, by a cadre of fallen angels. Irina stepped forward, her cheerful demeanor, or a stark contrast to her partner's icy pragmatism. Hi there. Sorry to interrupt your party. But a fallen angel leader named Kokobil is behind the theft. We're just here to get our swords back and punish the naughty birdie. Then we'll be out of your hair. The name Kokobil landed in the room like a bomb. Kiba went rigid, his hand instinctively going to his hip, a dark, vengeful light entering his eyes. Akino's smile vanished. A flicker of fear and hatred crossing her face. Kokobil was not just any fallen angel. He was a cadre class, a war hawk from the Great War, infamous for his cruelty and his obsession with restarting the conflict. Kokobil is here? Rias asked, her voice tight. In my town. That is correct, Zenobia said. Which is why we are here. This is church business. We demand you devils stay out of our way. We will handle the fallen angels and retrieve the Excaliburs. You demand. Akino's voice was dangerously sweet, a low crackle of lightning in the air. You walk into our home, insult our friend, and make demands of us. You have a great deal of nerve for a servant of a god who is long dead. The insult hit its mark. Irina gasped, her cheerful facade crumbling. Take that back. God is not dead. He is, watching over us. Is he? Zenobia's voice was ice. It matters not. Our faith is in our blades, not in pretty stories. The fact remains, this is our mission. Your involvement would only complicate things. Naruto sighed, a long, weary sound that drew all eyes to him. He had been listening to their back and forth, and it was painfully familiar. Faction against faction, squabbling over jurisdiction and ancient grudges while a real threat gathered on their doorstep. It was the petty politics of the shinobi villages all over again. So let me get this straight, he said. Cutting through the tension. Bad guy steals some special swords. He brings them to this town. You two are here to get them back. But instead of working with the people who actually live here and know the area, you want to start a fight with them because of a war that ended a long time ago. He shook his head. That's not a plan. That's just stupid. Zenobia's eyes flashed with anger. You dare lecture us? You, who reek of the foulest demonic taint. The taint you smell is my partner, Naruto said, patting his stomach. He's a 9-tailed fox. Bit of a grump, but he's family. And he and I have put down more bad guys than you've had hot meals. We did it by working with people, not by spitting on them. He stood up, his presence subtly shifting. The easygoing slouch was gone. Replaced by the quiet authority of a seasoned commander. Your enemy is this Kokobil guy, right? Not them. He gestured to Rias. And your enemy, Rias, is the guy who wants to start a war in your backyard, not these two. You're all pointing your swords in the wrong direction. His simple, irrefutable logic seemed to momentarily stun them into silence. He was right, of course. Their ingrained hatred for each other was blinding them to the immediate, shared threat. It was Kiba who broke the spell. I don't care about jurisdiction, he said, his voice trembling with a barely suppressed rage. The Excalibur project, I was a part of it. A survivor. The man who directed it, Valpierre Galilei, is working with Kokobil. If he's here, I have a score to settle. Valpierre is here as well. Zenobia's eyes widened slightly. This complicated things. She turned to Kiba. You were one of the test subjects. Impossible. All of you were killed when the project failed. I was left for dead, Kiba snarled. Summoning a demonic sword into his hand. And I will have my revenge on the man who threw me and my friends away like trash. He glared at Zenobia. And I'll take that holy sword from you while I'm at it. He shot forward. A blur of speed, his demonic blade aimed at Zenobia's heart. Zenobia didn't flinch. In a single, fluid motion, she unwrapped her massive sword. It wasn't one blade, but a crude, heavy greatsword cobbled together from pieces of other swords. It was the Excalibur of destruction. She met Kiba's charge head-on, the clash of holy and demonic steel ringing through the room. The fight was short and brutal. Kiba's speed was incredible, but Xenovia's raw power was overwhelming. She fought with a brutal, pragmatic efficiency, her massive blade cleaving through the air with unstoppable force. The two were locked in a stalemate, sparks flying as their blades met again and again. Before Rias or Irina could intervene, Naruto moved. He appeared between the two combatants in AF. Lash of yellow so fast it was as if he had teleported. He didn't summon a weapon. He didn't use a grand technique. He simply raised two fingers on each hand and caught their blades between them. Screech. The sounds of grinding metal filled the air as the two powerful swords, one holy and one demonic, were stopped dead, inches from each other. Kiba and Xenovia stared in disbelief, their arms straining, but their weapons wouldn't budge. He was holding them in place with the sheer, unbelievable strength of his index and middle fingers. Enough, Naruto said, his voice dangerously quiet. He applied a flicker of pressure. And with a sharp twang, both Kiba and Xenovia were disarmed, their swords sent flying into the ceiling where they embedded themselves deep into the wooden beams. The enemy is outside, Naruto stated. His golden eyes boring into both of them. Fight him, not each other. The display of casual, overwhelming strength left everyone speechless. Xenovia looked at her empty hands, then at Naruto. A flicker of something new in her eyes. It wasn't fear. It was a grudging, analytical respect. Suddenly, a scream echoed from outside, followed by the sound of a manic, cackling laugh. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated chaos. Sounds like the opening act has started, Naruto said. Without another word, he vanished from the room, appearing on the school grounds a second later. The rest of them, shocked back to their senses, scrambled to follow. They found Naruto standing calmly in the middle of the track field. Across from him was a man in a tattered white straitjacket. His face contorted in a psychotic grin. He wielded a bizarre, flickering sword of light. It was Fried Selzen, a rogue exorcist known for his sadistic love of slaughter. Well, well, well. Fried cackled, his eyes wide and crazed. Look what we have here. A whole pack of juicy devils. And a couple of goody two-shoes church girls. It's an all-you-can-kill buffet. Fried Selzen, Xenovia growled. Summoning her Excalibur back into her hand. Where is Valpier? Kiba demanded, his own sword reappearing. Oh, the old man. Fried giggled. He's busy preparing the main event. Lord Kokobile is getting awfully impatient, you see. He wants to hear the world scream. Fried lunged, his light sword of blur, aimed not at the devils or the exorcists, but at Issei, who he correctly identified as the weakest link. But before his blade could even get close, a shadow fell over him. Naruto appeared in front of him, having moved so fast he didn't even seem to disturb the air. You talk too much, Naruto said. He delivered a single, precise chop to the back of Fried's neck. The crazed exorcist's eyes rolled back into his head, and he crumpled to the ground like a sack of potatoes, unconscious. It was over before it had even begun. Naruto bent down and picked up the flickering light sword, which solidified into a solid, ornate hilt with a jagged blade, an Excalibur fragment. He tossed it to a stunned Xenovia, who caught it on instinct. One down, Naruto said. Where's the old guy? He closed his eyes for a moment, extending his senses. He bypassed the loud, chaotic energies of the devils and the church warriors. Searching for something subtler. He found it almost immediately, a cloaked, hunched-over energy signature hidden within the main school building, reeking of fanaticism and old blood. But as his senses washed over the signature, he felt it again. That cold, empty wrongness he had sensed from the dimensional gap. It was faint, almost non-existent, clinging to the old man's aura like a parasite. It wasn't demonic, or holy, or natural. It was the energy of the void. Kurama, you feel that? On the old man. I feel it, the fox rumbled, a note of genuine unease in his voice. It's like the nothingness Kagaya used to travel through, but hungry. Be careful, Kit. Naruto's eyes snapped open, his expression now deadly serious. This wasn't just a squabble between factions anymore. The greater, hidden threat he had only glimpsed was directly involved, however peripherally. He's in the school, Naruto announced, and started walking towards the building. The others, still processing the speed with which he had dispatched Fried, quickly followed. They found Valpier Galilei in the school science lab, surrounded by complex magical circles. He was an old, wizened man with the fanatical eyes of a true believer. He was holding another Excalibur fragment, attempting to merge it with a fourth, creating a single, true holy sword. Valpierre Galilei. Kiba roared, lunging forward. Valpierre just smiled, a broken, empty expression. Too late, little survivor. The ceremony is nearly complete. Lord Kokobile will be so pleased. He will give us the war we all crave. The beautiful, endless war. As Kiba's blade descended, a massive, black feathered wing slammed down, blocking the attack and sending Kiba flying back. A figure descended from a hole in the ceiling, landing with a ground-shaking impact. He was tall and imposing. With 10 black, feathered wings, and a cruel, handsome face set in a permanent sneer of boredom and contempt. It was Kokobile. Enough games, the fallen angel leader boomed. His voice dripping with ancient power and weariness. Valpierre, you have served your purpose. He casually backhanded the old man, sending him crashing into a wall. And you lot, you are all so very, very boring. His gaze swept over them all, dismissing Rias and her peerage, dismissing the church warriors. Then his eyes landed on Naruto, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine interest appeared. You, Kokobile said, tilting his head. I don't know you. Your energy is loud. Like a child screaming for attention. Are you the thing that made Riser Phoenix cry? He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound. Excellent. Perhaps you can offer me a moment's entertainment before I burn this town to the ground. You want to start another war? Naruto asked, his voice calm, but his body was coiled like a spring. Why? Haven't enough people died already? Kokobile's sneer widened. Died. Oh, my dear, naive child. The Great War was the only time I ever felt alive. The thrill of battle, the symphony of destruction. But then Azazel grew soft. Michael hid in heaven. The devils put children on their thrones. They all became cowards, content with this disgusting, fragile, peace. I am no coward. I will reignite the flames of war myself, right here, right now. I will kill the sisters of two Satans and force them to act. Power exploded from his body, a crushing pressure that forced everyone but Naruto to their knees. The building groaned, windows shattering from the sheer force of his aura. I will kill you all, and then I will move on to the next town, and the next, until heaven ends. The underworld have no choice but to answer. He roared. He raised a hand, and a colossal spear of pure white light, easily 10 times larger than the one Rainer had used on Issei, formed above the school. It radiated enough power to not just destroy the building, but to wipe the entire district off the map. Let us begin with a firework. Kokobile bellowed with glee. Let this be the first scream in a new era of glorious war. Die. He thrust his hand down, and the spear of annihilation descended. Rias and the others stared in horror, their bodies frozen by his immense power, unable to even summon a defensive circle. This was the power of a faction leader. They were utterly outmatched. But Naruto didn't flinch. He didn't even look concerned. He just looked angry. You're just another broken old man obsessed with the past. He said, his voice cutting through Kokobile's mad rant. And I'm tired of listening to you. He took a single step forward, planting his feet firmly on the ground. He held his hands in front of his mouth. And chakra, a violent, bubbling purple-black, began to gather. It wasn't the calm, golden energy of Sage Mode. It was the raw, untamed power of the Nine Tails. The chakra condensed with a terrifying, high-pitched shriek, forming a sphere of pure, destructive energy so dense it seemed to drink the light from the room. It was a perfect, swirling orb of yin and yang chakra. A miniature black hole of raw power. A tailed beast bomb. You want to see a firework? Naruto's voice echoed, now layered with the deep, demonic rumble of Kurama. I'll show you a firework. He thrust his hands forward just as Kokobile's spear was about to impact the school. The tailed beast bomb shot upwards, leaving a trail of distorted air in its wake. It met the descending spear. Of holy light in the sky directly above them. For a single, silent moment, the two ultimate attacks, one of holy annihilation and one of demonic destruction, pushed against each other. Then, they detonated. The world vanished in a silent, blinding flash of white and black. The resulting shockwave was a physical thing, a hammer blow of pure force that vaporized the entire school building and flattened every tree within a mile radius. A massive, churning sphere of conflicting energy hung in the sky, a new, terrible star that lit up the night for miles around. In the distance, on the roof of a tall building, A young man with silver hair and a bored expression watched the spectacle. His name was Valley Lucifer, the wielder of the divine dividing and the White Dragon Emperor. He had been drawn here by the spike of power from Kokobile. But the second power, the one that had just met the fallen angel's attack head-on, that was something else. Something new. Well now, Valley murmured to himself, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. What have we here? This might finally be interesting. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The White Dragon's Challenge. The sound did not return all at once. It seeped back into the world. A low, ominous hum that vibrated in the teeth and bones. The blinding sphere of black and white energy that had consumed the sky pulsed, a monstrous heart beating out of rhythm, before finally imploding. Swallowing its own light and sound in a final, violent shudder. A wave of superheated air, stripped of its sound, washed over the cratered landscape, a silent, ghostly hurricane. In the newly formed basin where Kuo Academy had once stood, the combatants picked themselves up. Rias's peerage, shielded by a last-second defensive barrier from their king, were shaken but unharmed. Zenobia and Irina stood back to back, their faces pale with awe and terror. They had dedicated their lives to wielding a fragment of God's power, and they had just witnessed Tubei NGS casually throw around forces that dwarfed their holy swords into insignificance. Kokobile hovered in the air, his 10 wings beating slowly, his bored sneer finally gone. In its place was a look of wild, ecstatic disbelief. The stalemate had shattered his spear of light and blown 2 of his wings clean off, leaving behind cauterized, smoking stumps. But he didn't seem to feel the pain. He was staring at Naruto. His eyes wide with a fanatic's glee. Naruto stood his ground, the 9 tails chakra shroud flickering around him like a dying flame before receding completely, leaving him looking tired but resolute. The tailed beast bomb had taken a significant chunk of his reserves, especially when clashing with an attack of that magnitude. He was breathing heavily, a testament to the power Kokobile wielded. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Kokobile roared with laughter, a trickle of black blood running from the corner of his mouth. That power. That glorious, destructive power. You are no mere stray. You are a true monster. A worthy opponent to usher in my new war. The only thing I'm ushering in is your defeat, Naruto shot back, his body tensing for another round. But before either of them could move, a new voice, calm and laced with a bored sort of amusement, cut through the tension. That's enough, Kokobile. You're being an embarrassment. Everyone looked up. A figure was descending from the sky. Not with wings of a devil or a fallen angel, but cloaked in a brilliant white and blue draconic aura. He was a young man with silver hair, dressed in a simple V-neck shirt and jeans. He landed softly on the edge of the crater, his hands tucked casually in his pockets. On his back, 8 beautiful, ethereal wings of light, like those of a dragon, unfurled and then vanished in a shower of blue particles. Kokobile stiffened, his ecstatic mania vanishing, replaced by a cold dread. Valley, what are you doing here? My job, unfortunately, the silver-haired boy, Valley, said with a sigh. Ophis was getting tired of your little tantrum. She sent me to collect you. Starting a war without permission is against the rules, you know. He completely ignored Kokobile's injuries and the surrounding devils. His entire focus, his predator's gaze, was locked onto Naruto. You, Valley said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. The energy you just released. It wasn't demonic. It wasn't holy. It wasn't even draconic. But it was immense. Stronger, even, than this old crow's. He tilted his head, his violet eyes gleaming with an intensity that promised violence. Tell me, who are you? Naruto Uzumaki. Who are you? Valley Lucifer. The White Dragon Emperor, he announced, the title rolling off his tongue with a casual sort of pride. He took a step forward, the ground crackling under his feet. I have the spirit of the vanishing dragon, Albion, sealed within me. My sacred gear, divine dividing, can have the power of anyone I touch and add it to my own. He explained this not as a boast, but as a statement of fact, an introduction between equals. A sacred gear. Naruto glanced at Issei, who was staring at Valley with a look of primal fear. Issei's left arm began to glow, a red gauntlet forming over it. Albion. A deep, draconic voice roared from Issei's gauntlet. Valley smirked. Ddrag. A similar voice echoed from his own aura. It has been a long time, old rival. To think we would meet again. With you in such a pathetic host. The Red Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor, Valley mused, his gaze drifting from a terrified Issei back to Naruto. Destined rivals. Fated to fight for all eternity. It's all very poetic. And very, very boring. His smile widened. But you are not part of that destiny. Your power comes from within. It's your own. You met Kokobeel's attack. An attack that could have leveled a city, and you're still standing. That is far more interesting than any tired old prophecy. What do you want, Valley? Kokobeel growled, clearly intimidated by the newcomer. I want a fight, Valley said simply, his eyes never leaving Naruto. I live to fight the strongest. I plan to one day defeat Great Red, the dragon of dragons that swims in the dimensional gap. I seek to stand at the pinnacle of all things. I thought my only true rival would be DxD's host, or perhaps Ophis herself. He took another step. But your existence changes the entire equation. I need to know. I need to feel your power for myself. He wasn't asking for a fight. He was declaring it. Without another word, a brilliant white suit of draconic armor exploded into existence around Valley's body. It was sleek and powerful, with glowing blue gems and massive wings. His balance breaker. The pressure he emitted skyrocketed, eclipsing Kokobeel's entirely. Naruto didn't back down. He settled into his fighting stance, the golden hue of sage mode returning to his eyes. He could feel it, the sheer, overwhelming power pouring off Valley. This was rent from Riser's cheap immortality or Kokobeel's brute force. This was refined, honed, a power integrated perfectly with its wielder. This was a true opponent. Then come on, Naruto said, a grin of his own spreading across his face. The exhaustion he felt vanished, replaced by the familiar, thrilling surge of adrenaline that came from facing a worthy adversary. Valley shot forward, not as a blur, but as a literal comet of white light. He crossed the distance of the crater in a nanosecond, his armored fist aimed at Naruto's face. Naruto, his sage mode senses screaming, met the punch with his own. The impact was cataclysmic. A shockwave, 10 times more powerful than the one from Kaniko's punch, erupted from the point of impact. It didn't kick up dust, it shattered the very ground beneath them, carving a new, deeper crater inside the first one. The sheer force sent everyone else stumbling back, Rias having to erect another shield to protect her peerage from the kinetic fallout. Naruto grunted, his arm groaning under the strain. But he held his ground. Valley's eyes, visible through his helmet's visor, widened in surprise. You blocked that. No one blocks that. You punch too hard, Naruto grunted back. He pushed off. Disengaging. My turn. He formed a Rasengan in his hand and lunged. Valley, instead of dodging, met the attack head-on, his palm glowing with white energy. The moment the Rasengan touched his hand, Naruto felt it. A draining sensation. Half the power of his technique was simply gone, absorbed by Valley's armor. The Rasengan, weakened, dissipated with a weak fizzle. Divine dividing, Valley stated. Your power is now mine. He threw a punch, and Naruto could feel the stolen energy of his own attack amplifying the blow. He crossed his arms to block, the impact sending him skidding back dozens of feet. Carving 2 deep trenches in the earth. This was going to be tricky. Brute force was out. Taijutsu was a risk. Every time he made contact, he would get weaker, and Valley would get stronger. Naruto flashed through a series of hand seals. Wind style. Rasenshuriken. A screeching, 4-pointed shuriken made of pure wind chakra formed in his hand. This wasn't a technique you could block. It attacked on a cellular level, with billions of microscopic wind blades. He threw it. The attack screamed through the air, closing the distance instantly. Valley's wings flared. Divide. 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 The voice of Albion echoed. Valley didn't try to touch the Rasenshuriken. Instead, he projected his power, creating a field of division around him. The Rasenshuriken entered the field and was visibly diminished. Its size and rotational speed halving, and then halving again. By the time it reached Valley, it was little more than a spinning breeze, and he slapped it aside contemptuously. But it had been a feint. While Valley was focused on the Rasenshuriken, Naruto had created 2 shadow clones. One appeared above Valley, and one below. Sage art. Massive Rasengan. They both roared. 2 enormous, golden Rasengans, each the size of a boulder, slammed into Valley from opposite directions, trapping him in a pincer attack. The resulting explosion was immense. But as the smoke cleared, Valley was still there. Hovering, his armor smoking but intact. He had divided the power of both attacks just in time, but it had taken effort. A crack had appeared on his gauntlet. Not bad, Valley admitted. A genuine note of excitement in his voice. Using your clones to bypass my divine dividing, a clever tactic. Naruto landed on the ground, breathing hard. During the clash, at the very peak of their power output. He'd felt it again, that cold, hungry void from the dimensional gap, its attention momentarily drawn to their battle like a shark to blood in the water. This thing, this Erebus, it fed on conflict. Valley descended, his armor retracting with a hiss. This has been a delightful appetizer. He looked at Naruto, a new level of respect in his eyes. You are strong, Naruto Uzumaki. Perhaps even strong enough to be my true rival. But we can't have our main course now. It would be disruptive. The fight was over. It had been a draw, a test of strength that had left both of them wanting more. As the adrenaline faded, the concern of his friends rushed in to fill the void. Naruto. Rias was at his side in an instant, her hand on his arm, her eyes searching his face for any sign of injury. Are you all right? That was. I'm fine, he said, giving her a reassuring smile. Just a little warm-up. Akino appeared on his other side, pressing a handkerchief to his brow. Era, you had me so worried. To be so reckless, perhaps you need someone to look after you. Her thumb brushed against his cheek, a silent promise in her touch. Zenobia and Irina approached, their expressions complex. That power, Zenobia said, looking from Naruto to Valley. It's beyond anything the church has ever recorded. You fought the White Dragon Emperor to a standstill. He was awesome. Irina gushed. Her earlier hostility completely forgotten, replaced by a fangirl's admiration. It was like watching a legend come to life. Kokobile, who had been forgotten during the duel, finally made his move. Seeing Valley distracted, he gathered his remaining power, preparing to flee. This isn't over. He snarled. But before he could escape, a new, calm voice spoke from above. Oh, I think it is, Kokobile. A man descended, landing gracefully between the two groups. He wore a stylish trench coat over a simple shirt, and his black hair had distinctive silver bangs. He had a warm, lazy smile on his face. But his eyes held an ancient, calculating intelligence. A dozen black, feathered wings, more regal and powerful than Kokobile's, were spread behind him. It was Azazel, the governor of the fallen angels and their leader. Azazel. Kokobile choked out, his face paling. Long time no see, Azazel said cheerfully. He glanced at Kokobile's tattered form. Starting wars, getting your wings ripped off, honestly. You're becoming a caricature. Without another word, he made a gesture, and a spear of light materialized, piercing Kokobile's shoulder and pinning him to the ground. Another gesture. And the rogue fallen angel was encased in a block of solid, frozen energy. We'll have a long talk about this back home. Azazel then turned his attention to the assembled group, his gaze ring on Valley with paternal exasperation before settling on Naruto. His smile widened into a look of boundless, scientific curiosity. So, you're the anomaly that's been making my sensors go haywire, Azazel said. Walking over and circling Naruto as if examining a rare specimen. Fascinating. A chakra-based life form from another dimension. Your power output during that last clash rivaled the heavenly dragons at their peak. And you can create solid clones. And use nature energy. Oh, the research possibilities are endless. He sounded less like a faction leader and more like an obsessive hobbyist who had just found the Holy Grail. What do you want, Azazel? Rias asked, stepping in front of Naruto protectively. Relax, little Grimoire, Azazel said with a wave of his hand. I'm not here to fight. In fact, I'm here to do the exact opposite. He became serious, his gaze sweeping over all of them. Kokobile's little stunt here, the Chaos Brigade's recent activities, and now, he nodded at Naruto. The arrival of an unknown powerhouse who could single-handedly tip the scales. The old status quo is over. The peace we've had is a joke, and it's about to break. He looked from Rias to Zenobia. We can't keep going like this. Devils, angels, fallen angels, fighting each other over old grudges while new, bigger threats are popping up in our backyard. It's inefficient. It's stupid. He hoed Naruto's earlier sentiment perfectly. I'm proposing a summit, Azazel declared. A peace conference. Me, Searsex, and Michael from the heavens. We meet, we talk, and we forge a real alliance. We stop being three separate, squabbling factions and become a united front. The proposal was so radical, so unexpected, that it stunned everyone into silence. A formal alliance between the three mortal enemies. It was unthinkable. And you, Azazel said, his eyes locking onto Naruto. I want you to be there. Not as a representative of any side, but as a witness. An observer. A living, breathing reason for why we need to stop our petty infighting. Your very existence proves that the world is bigger and stranger than any of us thought. Your presence will force everyone to take this seriously. It was a masterful political move. He was using Naruto's status as a powerful neutral party to legitimize the talks. Naruto considered it. He hated politics. But he hated pointless wars even more. He had seen the look in Kiba's eyes. The hatred between Xenovia and the devils. It was the same cycle of pain he had dedicated his life to breaking. If his presence could help them find a better way, how could he refuse? Fine, Naruto said. I'll come to your meeting. He crossed his arms, his gaze firm. But I'm not a politician. And I'm not a pawn. I'm there to make sure you people actually talk, not just posture. If anyone tries to start something, I'll end it. It was a bold statement to make to one of the most powerful beings in the world, but Azazel just laughed, a sound of genuine delight. Excellent. He exclaimed. I knew I'd like you. Valley, you're dismissed. Take Kokobile and go. Valley, who had been watching the entire exchange with a bored detachment, simply shrugged. Whatever. He hefted the frozen block containing Kokobile over his shoulder as if it weighed nothing and vanished into the sky, his mission complete. Azazel gave the group a final, charming smile. I'll be in Ouch with Searsex to arrange the details. Try not to blow up any more of the town before then, alright. And with a final flutter of his 12 wings, he too was gone. A heavy silence descended on the crater. The immediate threat was gone. The battle was over. But in its place, something far larger and more complicated loomed. A peace summit. A new era. And Naruto Uzumaki, the stranger from another world, was now standing right at the center of it all. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. Whispers in the Great Hall. The chosen location for the peace summit was, ironically, the rebuilt Kuo Academy. Azazel had insisted on it. His reasoning a wry mix of pragmatism and poetic justice. The place where one fanatic tried to start a war, he'd said via a communication circle, is the perfect place for us to officially end one. The reconstruction, funded by a near-limitless Grimoire budget and expedited by devil magic, had been completed in a matter of days. The new building stood pristine and gleaming, a monument to resilience. Though the lingering scent of ozone and raw power was a ghost that refused to be exorcised. An atmosphere of profound and heavy tension hung over the campus, thick and suffocating as the summer humidity. It was a historic day, a day that would either herald a new era of cooperation or be remembered as the prelude to the next great war. Powerful barriers, woven from the combined energies of angels, fallen angels, and devils, shimmered invisibly around the school, turning it into the most secure fortress on the planet. Inside the newly minted student council room, a large, circular table had been set up. At 3 points sat the leaders of the biblical world. Searsex Lucifer, the Crimson Satan, was a figure of relaxed charisma, though a deep weariness was visible in his kind, crimson eyes. Opposite him sat Michael, the leader of the Seraphs and the acting head of heaven. His form was composed of golden light, taking the shape of a handsome man with a dozen luminous wings. His presence radiating a benevolence so profound it was almost painful to behold. And beside him, lounging in his chair with a lazy, irreverent slouch, was Azazel, the governor of the fallen angels. Looking more like a visiting professor than a faction leader. Their seconds stood behind them. The stoic and beautiful Graphia Lucifuge behind her husband, Searsex. The fiery-haired angel Gabriel behind her brother, Michael. Azazel, ever the non-conformist, had come alone. And then there was Naruto. He had been given his own seat at the table, a fourth point of power that represented no faction, no history, and no agenda. He sat in silence, arms crossed, his sage mode active but subtle, the golden pigment around his eyes the only outward sign. He wasn't a participant, he was the embodiment of the stakes. Rias and her peerage, along with Xenovia and Irina, stood a respectful distance away, near the wall. They were observers, proof of the nascent cooperation this summit hoped to formalize. I believe we are all in agreement, Michael began, his voice a chorus of harmonious chimes. The actions of Kokubile were a threat to us all. The emergence of the Chaos Brigade, an organization comprised of terrorists from all sides, proves that our old enmities are being exploited. Exploited and outdated, Azazel chimed in, leaning back and lacing his fingers behind his head. We've been glaring at each other across the fence for so long, we didn't notice the wolves digging under it. Ophis and her group want to disrupt the entire system. They see our three-way standoff as a weakness, and frankly, they're not wrong. Sears nodded, his expression somber. Indeed. For too long, we have allowed the grudges of a war fought millennia ago to dictate our future. We lost our God. We lost our original Satans. We have all bled enough. It is time for a new path. He looked from Michael to Azazel. I, on behalf of the Devils, formally propose a treaty of alliance. Mutual defense, non-aggression, and open communication. Quote. It was a momentous declaration. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of centuries of hatred and bloodshed. Michael's luminous form seemed to brighten. Heaven is in agreement. The Lord's last message to us before his death was one of love and forgiveness. We have failed to honor that message for far too long. We will gladly join you in an alliance for peace. All eyes turned to Azazel. The leader of the fallen angels was the wild card, the cynic. He looked at Sears, then at Michael, then his gaze drifted to Naruto. Peace is a nice idea, Azazel said, his lazy smile returning. But it's a fragile one. All it takes is one fanatic, one true believer in the old ways, to shatter it. He gestured with his head toward Naruto. And that doesn't even account for the new pieces on the board. Naruto-kun here isn't one of us. He operates on a different level, with a different kind of power. We can't build a lasting peace if we don't acknowledge and understand the new realities of our world. The leaders were silent for a moment, contemplating his words. They all knew what he meant. Naruto's presence changed everything. Naruto finally spoke, his voice calm and even, cutting through the thick political atmosphere like a kunai through silk. You keep talking about me like I'm a storm on the horizon. He looked at each leader in turn, his gaze direct and unwavering. I'm not a storm. I'm just a guy who wants to keep his friends safe. You make peace, you stop trying to kill each other over stupid reasons, and you'll find I'm the quietest neighbor you've ever had. You keep fighting, you keep putting the people I care about in danger, then you'll see a storm. It was a simple, blunt declaration. A promise and a warning in one. It stripped away all the posturing and laid the core issue bare. His allegiance wasn't to a faction, it was to people. Sears smiled, a genuine, appreciative smile. A straightforward and honest answer. Perhaps we leaders could learn from it. He looked at Azazel. So, what is your answer? Azazel sighed dramatically. Oh, alright, fine. The fallen angels are in. But I'm officially blaming you two if the paperwork is boring. A collective, silent breath of relief seemed to pass through the room. It was done. The foundation had been laid. It was in that precise moment of hope that the world outside the window dissolved into chaos. A massive, intricate magic circle, a violent purple and black, flared into existence, blanketing the entire school. The shimmering defensive barriers around the campus flickered. Overloaded by a power they were not designed to repel, and then shattered like glass. The attack came not from outside the barriers, but from within them. Betrayal. An army of figures teleported onto the school grounds, rogue devils, fallen angels, and humans in cultist robes. They were mages, hundreds of them, and they immediately began chanting, their combined power causing the very air to warp. An attack. Graphia announced, her voice sharp and cold as she moved to Sears' side. The Chaos Brigade, Azazel swore, jumping to his feet, his lazy demeanor gone, replaced by the sharp focus of a battle-hardened general. They used sympathizers on the security detail to create a backdoor. Clever bastards. Before anyone else could react, the ceiling of the student council room exploded inwards. Debris rained down as a group of figures dropped into the room. At their lead was a woman with long, dark green hair, dressed in a magical girl outfit that was a bizarre and terrifying contrast to the murderous intent in her eyes. It was Kateria Leviathan, a descendant of the original Satan Leviathan, her face a mask of zealotry. Sears Lucifer. Michael. Azazel. She shrieked. Her voice filled with a venomous hatred. You defile the names of your people by consorting with the enemy. You are stains on our history. Today, the rightful heirs of the underworld reclaim what is ours. Today, you die. A massive torrent of water, dense as mercury and swirling with demonic power, erupted from her hands, aimed at the center of the table. The three leaders reacted instantly. See. Rex's hand glowed with the power of destruction, ready to annihilate the attack. Michael summoned a spear of pure, golden light. Azazel created a miniature golden dragon of light energy around his fist. But Naruto was faster. He was already on his feet, a blur of motion. He didn't try to counter the attack. He didn't try to block it. He slammed his palms on the round table. Everyone, down. An instant later, he kicked the massive table upwards. The heavy slab of wood and steel, weighing over a ton, flipped into the air with impossible speed, spinning like a disc. It intercepted Kateria's water torrent midair. The magical water, potent enough to erode solid rock, slammed into the makeshift shield. The table disintegrated instantly, but it had served its purpose, disrupting the attacks. Momentum and causing it to splash harmlessly against the reinforced walls in a wave of corrosive steam. In that split second of reprieve, Naruto moved. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The room was filled with 100 Narutos. It wasn't random chaos. It was organized, instantaneous action. Rias. Get everyone non-combatant out of here. Kiba, Kaneko, Zenobia, Irina. You're with me. Akeno, air support. The original Naruto barked. His voice the unquestionable command of a cage. You three, he pointed to the stunned faction leaders, deal with the magical girl. We'll handle the grunts and the mages outside. There was no time for argument. His authority was absolute, born from a lifetime of leading in the heart of battle. The Grimoire peerage and the former church warriors, who had spent weeks training and living with him, snapped to attention and followed his orders without hesitation. Let's go. Naruto yelled, and he and a dozen clones shattered the panoramic window, leaping out onto the school grounds below. The others right behind them. The scene was one of controlled chaos. The Chaos Brigade mages were chanting, weaving a massive containment spell to trap the leaders, while their Wario R-class members engaged the honor guards of the angels and devils. Issei. Naruto's voice roared from the battlefield. You've got the red dragon, right? Use it. Be a diversion. Draw their fire. Issei, who had been frozen in terror, looked at Naruto, then at Rias, and a spark of courage ignited in his chest. Boost. 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 The gauntlet roared. Right. He yelled, and charged towards a group of rogue fallen angels. His boosted power making him a noisy, glowing target. Naruto's clones spread across the battlefield like a golden tide. They didn't just fight, they coordinated. Team 4, break the spell on the west flank. Team 7, protect the angelic guard. Team 2, analysis. Find the leader of the mages. Clones relayed information, created openings, and rescued overwhelmed guardsmen with flawless efficiency. It was a symphony of combat, and Naruto was its conductor. Searsex, Michael, and Azazel, watching from the shattered room for a split second before engaging Kateria, were stunned. They were kings, accustomed to giving orders. But this boy, he didn't just give orders. He embodied the battle itself. As the fight raged, Naruto's Sage Mode senses were stretched to their absolute limit, tracking hundreds of combatants at once. And in that state of heightened perception, he felt it. It was in a small, shadowed alcove near the gymnasium, far from the main battle. A tiny, almost imperceptible tear in the fabric of space flickered open. It wasn't a violent rip, but a silent, surgical incision. From the tear, a single tendril of absolute blackness, a ribbon of pure void, emerged. It wasn't solid. It wasn't liquid, it was simply, anti-existence. A high-ranking devil noble, who had been part of Searsex's entourage, was scrambling away from the fighting, his face a mask of pure terror. He wasn't a warrior. He was a bureaucrat, a politician, caught in a war he never wanted. The tendril of shadow moved with an unnatural, silent speed. It didn't lash out. It simply touched the back of his uniform. The devil didn't scream. There was no sound at all. The moment the tendril made contact, the noble began to unravel. His body, his clothes, his demonic energy, his very soul, it all just dissolved, turning into a thin, gray mist that was instantly sucked into the tendril. In less than a second, a powerful, living being was gone, erased from existence so completely that not even a memory of his energy lingered in the air. The tendril retracted back into the spatial tear, which sealed itself without a sound. The entire event had taken less than 2 seconds. Amidst the roaring chaos of battle, only two beings perceived it. In the dimensional gap, Ophis, the Ouroboros dragon, who observed all of reality with her infinite gaze, tilted her head. The silent void was her home. But this was an intruder. A cancer. And on the battlefield, Naruto froze for a nanosecond, a cold dread washing over him that had nothing to do with the hundreds of enemies in front of him. His senses had screamed a warning, a primal terror that made the Chaos Brigade look like a child's tantrum. It was real. The thing from the gap was real, and it could reach into their world. And it was hungry. He was shaken from his thoughts by a roar of triumph. Kateria had managed to push back the three leaders momentarily. Gathering a massive amount of power, she unleashed her ultimate technique. Leviathan's raging torrent. Quote. A colossal wave of demonic water, a veritable tsunami, manifested in the air, threatening to wash over the entire campus, to drown everyone, friend and foe alike. Searzex prepared to unleash a wave of destruction. Azazel began forming a massive spear of light. I've got it. Naruto yelled. He flashed through a series of hand seals, one of his clones nearby. Gathering an immense amount of nature energy. He thrust his hand forward, not outwards. Sage Art. Giant Rasengan overwhelming vortex. A massive Rasengan, the size of a small house, formed in front of him. But instead of pushing it forward, he spun it in place, creating a terrifyingly powerful gyre. The Rasengan became a whirlpool, a miniature maelstrom that pulled on the air itself. Kateria's raging tsunami, instead of crashing down, was drawn into the vortex. The colossal wall of water was sucked into the spinning sphere of chakra, churned, and then dispersed harmlessly as a fine mist that rained down on the battlefield. He had neutralized her ultimate attack with a move that was both overwhelmingly powerful and perfectly controlled. Before Kateria could recover from her shock, Naruto was in front of her. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have a Rasengan. Your fight is with me, he said, his voice deadly calm. Insolent brat. She shrieked, lashing out with tendrils of water. Naruto moved like a leaf in the wind, flowing around her attacks. His movements were fluid, precise. He wasn't just dodging, he was closing the distance. He slid under a water whip, his hand darting out, striking her wrist. Her flow of magic sputtered. He spun, the side of his foot connecting with the back of her knee, buckling her leg. He moved behind her, two fingers jabbing into a pressure point on her back. Her body seized up, her connection to her demonic power severed. She fell to her knees, paralyzed, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. He hadn't overpowered her with a bigger explosion. He had systematically dismantled her. A surgeon disabling a machine. It's over, he said, standing over her. The Chaos Brigade mages, seeing their leader defeated and the tide of battle turned so decisively by Naruto's clones, broke. They opened teleportation circles and began to flee. Kateria glared up at him, her eyes burning with pure, unadulterated hatred. Kill me, she spat. Kill me and prove that you are no better than the tyrants you serve. My death will inspire 1,000 more to rise up. Naruto looked down at her, not with anger, but with a profound sadness. More killing won't solve anything, he said. His voice quiet but carrying across the now silent battlefield. It never does. It just creates more pain. More hate. More people like you. He knelt down, looking her directly in the eye. You want your family's legacy back. I get it. I spent my whole life fighting for my place in the world. But you're going about it the wrong way. You don't build a legacy by burning down someone else's. You build it by creating something new. Something better. He stood up, turning his back on her, a gesture of ultimate dismissal. He looked at the three faction leaders, who were staring at him. Their expressions unreadable. She's yours, Naruto said. Don't kill her. Make her watch. Make her watch you three work together to build a world so much better than the one she's fighting. For that her hatred becomes meaningless. The battle was over. The summit was a success, not because a treaty had been signed, but because it had been sealed in the crucible of a shared battle. The alliance was no longer a political idea. It was a reality forged in fire and water. Searzex, Michael, and Azazel looked at the paralyzed but living Kateria. Then they looked at the blonde boy standing in the middle of the devastation. Preaching a philosophy of mercy and progress that was so alien to their world, and yet felt so profoundly right. He was more than a powerhouse, more than a trump card. He was a moral compass. And his needle pointed towards a future they had never dared to imagine. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Heart of the Maelstrom. The aftermath of the battle at the summit was a strange mix of bureaucratic cleanup and newfound celebrity. In the days that followed, the Occult Research Club became the unofficial nexus of the New World Order. High-resolution communication circles flickered to life at all hours, projecting the images of Seersex, Azazel, or a slightly overwhelmed seraph discussing troop movements, intelligence sharing, and the myriad logistical nightmares involved in entangling centuries of mutual hatred. Through it all, Naruto remained the quiet, unshakable center. He'd sit on the plush couch, meticulously studying the instructions on a box of instant yakisoba, while Rias negotiated fallen angel patrol routes through devil territory. He'd offer Kaneko the last fish cake from his bowl while Akino provided a detailed, and likely classified, report on Heaven's sensor net capabilities. He was a constant, grounding presence, a living reminder of what they were all fighting for. He had become, in a way none of them had expected, their anchor. For the girls who now orbited him, the awe from the battle had settled into something deeper, more personal, and infinitely more complicated. The sheer scale of his power was one thing, it was like admiring a typhoon from a safe distance. But his actions, taking command, protecting everyone, and ultimately showing mercy to their enemy, were another. That wasn't a force of nature. That was a man. A man of incredible strength, unshakable principle, and a quiet kindness that felt more profound than any explosion. One afternoon, Rias found him on the clubhouse roof, his eyes closed, basking in the late afternoon sun. The whirlwind of politics had finally subsided for the day, leaving a fragile peace in its wake. She had spent the last hour on a call with her brother, discussing the terms of Kateria Leviathan's imprisonment. It was draining. The weight of a king's duty heavy on her shoulders. A moment of peace. She asked softly, stepping beside him. Naruto opened his eyes, a small, easy smile on his face. Something like that. It's quiet up here. You can feel the whole town breathing. Rias leaned against the railing, her fiery hair catching the golden light of the setting sun. I never had the chance to properly thank you, Naruto. Quote. For what? Beating up the magical girl. He joked. For everything, she said, her voice serious. For freeing me from Riser. For saving us from Kokobile. For showing us there's a different way. She looked at her hands, the hands of a king that commanded destruction. All my life, I've been taught that power is a tool for control. To command, to destroy, to win. But you use it to protect. To build. You won the raiding game, but you didn't claim me as a prize. You defeated Kateria, but you didn't take her life. It's a paradox. Not really, Naruto said, turning to lean against the railing beside her. Power's just a tool. You can use a hammer to build a house or to smash someone's skull. The hammer doesn't care. It's the person holding it that matters. He looked out at the town. The streets teeming with life. My whole life, I've been chasing after something. Recognition, strength, peace. I fought, I bled, I lost people I loved. And you know what I learned? Rias turned her full attention on him. What? That being the strongest doesn't mean anything if you're standing on a pile of ashes all by yourself, he said quietly. Being street wrong means having people you want to protect. It means having a home to come back to. That's not a paradox. It's the whole point. His words resonated deep within her. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a philosopher king. His wisdom forged in the fires of a world she couldn't imagine. In that moment, he wasn't her champion or her ally. He was her equal. A partner. An idea sparked in her mind, a day. Ire to see him not on a battlefield or in a clubhouse full of allies, but in the world he was now protecting. Naruto, she said, a new, lighter tone in her voice. Will you come with me on a walk? No. T is a devil king and her powerful friend. Just, as Rias. And Naruto. There's a crepe shop in the town square I've always wanted to try. Naruto looked at her, at the genuine, hopeful smile that had replaced the heavy burden of command. And his own smile widened. I'd like that a lot, Rias. Akino watched them leave from the clubhouse window, a thoughtful, almost predatory glint in her violet eyes. Rias was making her move. An appeal to the heart and mind. Akino's approach would need to be different. She wasn't interested in his philosophy. She was interested in the lightning she felt crackling beneath his skin, the raw, untamed power that called to the storm within her own soul. She found him the next day, not by chance, but by design. She knew he often sought out quiet, natural places to meditate. And the old Shinto shrine on the edge of town was a perfect spot. She was there when he arrived, dressed not in her school uniform, but in the white and red robes of a shrine maiden, sweeping the stone steps with a bamboo broom. Naruto-kun, she said, her voice a melodious purr. Fancy meeting you here. Have you come to pray? Just looking for a quiet place, he replied, taking in her attire. Didn't know you worked here. I help out from time to time, she said, leaning on her broom. It helps me balance myself. The words were true, but they were also a lure. My mother was a shrine maiden, you see. Before she met my father, a fallen angel. She let the information hang in the air, a deliberate crack in her perfect facade. She wanted to see his reaction. Bills recoiled in disgust at her mixed heritage, her ability to wield both demonic and holy power. Naruto's expression didn't change. So you're half and half. That's cool. Must have been tough, though. His simple acceptance was more disarming than any grand declaration. Akino felt a flicker of genuine surprise. It has its challenges, she admitted. And its urges. She put the broom aside and walked closer. Her smile turning sharp and dangerous. Sometimes, the lightning inside me wants to be let out. It wants to clash against something just as strong. Or stronger. She raised a hand, and a small, golden bolt of holy lightning crackled between her fingers. I saw how you fight, Naruto-kun. The control, the power. I want to understand it. I want to feel it. Spar with me. No holding back. This wasn't a request for a friendly match. It was a challenge, a seduction through combat. He could feel the raw, chaotic energy roiling beneath her calm exterior, the sadism she used as a shield, born from the pain of her past. She wasn't just testing his strength, she was testing his character. Would he be disgusted by her? Frightened? Or would he meet her darkness head on? Naruto simply nodded. All right. But if your lightning gets out of control, don't blame me for getting a little rough trying to calm it down. The double meaning in his words hit her like one of her own thunderbolts. A slow, genuine, thrilled smile spread across her face. I'm counting on it. The spar was a whirlwind of crackling energy and fluid motion. Akino unleashed her full power, a tempest of holy lightning that would have terrified any other devil. Naruto moved through the storm, not as an opponent, but as a partner in a dangerous dance. He didn't just deflect her attacks, he redirected them, his wind-style techniques guiding her lightning. Taming her storm without extinguishing it. At the peak of the battle, she hovered in the air, a goddess of thunder, and unleashed a massive bolt. Naruto didn't counter. He jumped into its path. His hand wreathed in a gentle, golden chakra. He caught the bolt of lightning in his bare hand. It writhed and struggled, but it could not escape, held fast by the pure life energy of his six-path sage mode. He didn't just nullify it, he held it, contained it. He landed in front of her, still holding the captured essence of her power in his palm. He looked her in the eye. His gaze stripping away her defenses. This is your power, Akino, he said, his voice firm but gentle. The part you got from your father. The part you hate. It's beautiful. It's strong. Stop being afraid of it. Stop hiding behind the pain. Just be you. He opened his hand, and the lightning dissipated into harmless, glittering motes of light. Akino stared at him, her lips parted, her breath caught in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. They either feared her power, desired it, or condemned it. He was the first person to ever simply accept it. To accept her. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. The sadistic mask crumbled, and for a moment, he saw the lonely, frightened girl she kept hidden inside. In that moment, her fascination with him solidified into a fierce, unwavering devotion. Zenobia and Irina found him later that week, ambushing him as he was leaving a convenience store with a bag of groceries. Naruto-san. Irina chirped, her auburn pigtails bouncing as she jogged to catch up. We have been tasked with an important mission by Lord Michael. We require your assistance. The mission, Xenovia deadpanned, walking beside her, is that Irina NTS to try the new limited edition parfait at the cafe down the street, and she thinks it's a matter of international security. The morale of Heaven's liaisons is crucial for the new alliance. Irina declared with a dramatic pose. Naruto chuckled. Since the battle with Kokobile, the two former church warriors had been granted a unique diplomatic status and were staying in Kuo. Irina had quickly shed her initial hostility, replacing it with an almost puppy-like hero worship. Xenovia remained more reserved, but her icy disdain had melted into a grudging, analytical respect that she tried, and failed, to hide. All right, I'll help with your mission, Naruto agreed. The cafe was a loud, cheerful place. Irina attacked her parfait with religious fervor, while Xenovia engaged Naruto in a conversation she'd clearly been planning. I have been studying your abilities, she began, her tone formal. They do not stem from a sacred gear, nor from any known magical system. You called it chakra. Is this the source of your faith? My faith? Naruto asked, surprised. Yes, Xenovia pressed, her yellow eyes intense. After learning of God's death, my own faith was shaken. I served a memory. My power came from a system whose creator was gone. But you have no God, no Satan, no external source. Yet your conviction is absolute. When you speak, you believe every word. When you fight, you have no doubt. What do you believe in that gives you such strength? It was a profound question from a young woman whose entire worldview had been shattered. She was looking for a new anchor, a new truth to hold onto. Naruto thought for a moment, stirring his coffee. I don't believe in a person or a system, he said finally. I believe in people. I believe in my friends. I believe that if you make a promise, you keep it. I believe that no one should have to be alone. And I believe that as long as you have people who care about you, and who you care for, you can get through anything. He looked at her. His gaze simple and direct. My strength doesn't come from my chakra. The chakra is just a tool. My strength comes from my bonds. Xenovia was silent. It was so simple, yet so powerful. A faith not in the divine, but in the connections between people. For her, a lonely orphan raised as a living weapon, the concept was both alien and deeply, achingly desirable. She looked at Naruto. Then at Irina happily chattering away, and then at her own hands that had only ever known how to hold a sword. Perhaps it was possible to build bonds, too. Kaneko found him last. She was the most reserved. The least likely to make a grand gesture. She discovered him meditating under the large camphor tree behind the clubhouse. He was perfectly still, seemingly one with the nature around him. She hesitated. Then walked over and sat down beside him, not saying a word. She opened a bag of chocolate bars and placed it on the grass between them. Naruto opened one eye, a small smile touching his lips. He took a chocolate bar. She took one. And they sat there for nearly an hour in a comfortable, perfect silence, watching the leaves rustle in the wind and listening to the distant sounds of the town. For Kaneko, words were difficult. Her past as a Nekomata, the betrayal and the fear of her own powers, had made her build walls of silence around her heart. But with Naruto, words weren't necessary. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He just accepted her presence. She felt a profound sense of peace around him, a safety that soothed the frightened kitten that still hid inside the stoic rook. He wasn't just a powerhouse. He was a sanctuary. The fragile peace of their personal moments was shattered late one evening by a citywide alarm. A powerful, unidentified energy signature had appeared in the industrial district. Rias's communication circle flared to life. It was Sona Citri. Rias, I'm sending my peerage to the site now. The signature is unstable. It feels like a stray devil, but corrupted. Twisted. Be careful. When the Grimoire peerage arrived, the scene was already one of chaos. The Citri peerage was holding a defensive line, but they were being pushed back. The Crete. Ur at the center of the destruction was a horror. It had once been a devil, but its form was now a shifting, semi-corporeal mass of shadow and screaming faces, tendrils of blackness lashing out and dissolving whatever they touched. Our attacks aren't working, shouted Saji, Sona's pawn. He fired a blast of energy that was simply absorbed into the creature's shadowy hide. It's consuming magic. Sona analyzed, her calm facade strained. Naruto arrived a moment after the others, and the instant he saw the creature, a cold dread seized him. It was the same energy. The same hungry, empty wrongness. He'd felt from the probe at the summit, only now it was wrapped around a living soul, poisoning it, using it as a puppet. Everyone, fall back. Naruto commanded, his voice cutting through the panic. Don't let it touch you. Its body erases matter. Rias unleashed a blast of her power of destruction. The crimson-black energy hit the creature, and a portion of its shadowy mass was annihilated. It flowed back together almost instantly, the wound unexisting itself. It wasn't regenerating. It was simply refusing to be damaged. This is bad, Akino murmured, her lightning fizzling out a few feet from the creature's body. Naruto stepped forward, his expression grim. This wasn't a fight for them. Their powers, based on the fundamental laws of this world, were useless against something that came from outside those laws. I'll handle this, he said. He closed his eyes and drew on his own power. Not Kurama's destructive chakra. Not the raw force of nature. He drew on the fundamental energy of life itself. The gift of the Sage of Six Paths. A brilliant, sun-gold aura flared around him, warm and life-affirming. It was the pure yang half of his power, the essence of creation. He didn't charge. He didn't form an attack. He simply held up his hand and projected that energy forward in a wave of pure, golden light. The light washed over the shadow monster. The effect was instantaneous and horrific. The creature began to scream, a sound that was not of the flesh, but of a soul being torn apart. The golden light of creation was the ultimate poison to the creature's void-based corruption. The shifting shadows began to burn away, not with fire, but with an intense, holy light, revealing the terrified, weeping face of the stray devil trapped within. The shadow, the essence of Erebus, fought back. Trying to consume the light, to unexist the energy of creation. But it was like trying to drink the sun. Naruto poured more and more power into the wave, his face set with grim determination. Be at peace, he whispered. With a final, soul-rending shriek, the last of the shadow was burned away. The stray devil at its core, its soul too corrupted to survive, dissolved into motes of light, finally purified. Silence fell on the industrial district. The watching devils, both Grimoire and Citri, stared, speechless. They had seen a monster that defied physics and magic. And they had watched Naruto defeat it not with a bigger explosion, but with its conceptual opposite. He hadn't just fought it. He had understood it. A dark shape detached itself from a nearby rooftop. Azazel landed softly beside them. His expression devoid of its usual humor. I saw the whole thing, the fallen angel leader said quietly, his eyes fixed on Naruto. That thing, it wasn't from our world. Its energy signature was like a hole in reality. He looked at Naruto, a new, profound gravity in his eyes. You didn't just destroy it. You erased its very nature. What in the world are you, kid? Naruto's golden aura faded, leaving him looking tired. I'm the only one who can fight it, he said, not with pride, but with the heavy certainty of a man who has just had his destiny laid bare. He looked at Rias, Akino, Kaneko, Zenobia, and Irina, who were rushing to his side, their faces etched with concern and awe. His purpose in this world was becoming terrifyingly clear. It wasn't to be a king or a political player. It was to be a shield. A shield for his new friends, for his new home, against a silent, creeping nothingness that threatened to consume them all. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Dragon of Dragons. The silence in the industrial district was heavier than the smoke rising from the cratered asphalt. It was a silence born of awe and a dawning, collective terror. The devils of the Grimoire and Citri peerages stared at the spot where the shadow monster had been, then back at Naruto, their minds struggling to process the conceptual battle they had just witnessed. Azazel, the millennia-old leader of the fallen, had shed every last trace of his lazy persona, his eyes sharp with an intensity that bordered on alarm. A hole in reality, he repeated, his voice low. That's what it felt like. Not just powerful, not just destructive. Empty. A fundamental violation of the laws of existence. He took a step closer to Naruto, his gaze piercing. And you countered it with its opposite. Pure life. Creation. I've studied every mythology, every power system known to our world. Nothing like that should exist in a single being. What are the six paths? Who is this sage? Naruto didn't answer immediately. He was looking at his friends. Rias stood protectively at his side, her hand resting on his arm as if to ground him. Akino's usual teasing smile was gone, replaced by a look of fierce, unwavering loyalty. Kaneko had moved to stand just behind him, a small, silent shadow offering her support. Zenobia and Irina stood ready, their hands on their swords, their allegiance clear. They weren't looking at him like a monster or an anomaly. They were looking at him like he was theirs to protect, a stark and touching reversal of roles. He was a man who believed the world could be better, Naruto said finally, his voice heavy. And he gave me the power to help make it that way. He met Azazel's gaze, a weary understanding passing between the boy-turned-god and the ancient angel-turned-scholar. And it looks like I have a new job to do. Before Azazel could press further, the world went quiet. It wasn't a natural silence. Sound didn't just stop, it was erased. The distant city hum, the crackle of residual energy. The very thrum of their own heartbeats, all of it vanished, sucked into a profound and absolute stillness. The air grew thick and heavy, the pressure dropping as if they had been plunged to the bottom of the deepest ocean. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath, the colors of the world becoming muted and gray. Everyone, from the powerful Azazel to the fledgling Issei, froze. Their senses, their magic, their very connection to the world around them was being smothered by a presence so immense, so fundamental, that it defied comprehension. It was like a bug trying to understand the sky. Only Naruto remained unaffected. His sage mode, his connection to the life of the planet, acted as an anchor. While their senses were being blinded, his were screaming. This new presence wasn't hostile. It was simply, absolute. It wasn't a wave, it was the ocean itself. In the center of the silent, gray world, a small figure began to resolve into existence. It was a young girl, no older than Kaneko, with long black hair and a gothic Lolita dress. Her expression was completely flat, her eyes too dark, bottomless pools of infinite stillness. She wasn't teleporting or appearing, she was simply becoming. As if she had always been there and the world was only now catching up. It was Ophis, the Ouroboros dragon. The dragon god of infinity. She took a small, delicate step forward. Her gaze sweeping past the frozen figures of Azazel and the others as if they were statues. Her eyes, holding the quiet of the void and the wisdom of eternity, landed on Naruto. You, she said, her voice a soft, toneless whisper that was somehow the only sound in the silent world. You are the one who makes the loud noise. But just now, you erased the other noise. The quiet noise. The one that is wrong. Naruto stood his ground, his senses telling him that this small girl possessed more power than everyone he had met in this world combined. Who are you? I am Ophis, she stated, as I. F announcing her name was the answer to every question. I want the dimensional gap. It is my home. It is where I was born. It is the place of silence and infinity. But it is not silent anymore. Great Red is loud. He is a pest. I created the Chaos Brigade to drive him out. She spoke with the simple, direct logic of a child explaining why she wanted her toy back. But now, she continued, tilting her head. A flicker of something akin to curiosity in her dead eyes, there is a new noise. A quiet noise. A hungry silence. It was sleeping, but the loud noise you made when you arrived woke it up. A cold dread trickled down Naruto's spine. The thing in the gap. The shadow. It has a name, Ophis whispered. Before the old god, before the old Satans, there was only the quiet. But there was also the potential for sound. The two fought. The sound won, and existence was born. The loser, the perfect, endless silence, was sealed away in the cracks between what was made. It was given a name by T. He first things that learned to fear it, Erebus. The primordial void. The name landed with the weight of a dying star. Erebus. The entity he had sensed, the probe he had seen, the corruption he had just purified, it had a name. And a history older than creation itself. The seal was perfect, Ophis continued, her tone unchanging. But your arrival, your energy is not of this existence. It is like a key made for a different lock. It did not break the seal, but it turned it, just a little. Enough for Erebus to whisper. Enough for it to reach out. She looked at the spot where the stray devil had been. The Chaos Brigade fools. They felt its whispers. They think it is a power they can control, a weapon to use against their enemies. They do not understand. You do not control the void. It does not make deals. It only, unmakes. Here it was. The truth of the threat, laid bare by the one being old enough to remember it. Why tell me this? Naruto asked, his mind racing. Because you are loud, Ophis said simply. Your power is the sound of life. Creation. It is the opposite of the hungry silence. I cannot erase Erebus. My power is infinity, but it is a part of this existence. To fight nothing, you must be something. You are the something that can hurt it. She took another step, now only a few feet from him. I want my home back. I want the silence of the gap. Erebus wants to turn everything into a different, emptier silence. Our goals are not aligned. She held out a small, pale hand. Help me erase the wrong noise. In return, I will tell you where to find it. I will tell you what the Chaos Brigade is planning. We can be allies. An alliance with the Infinite Dragon God, the leader of the world's most wanted terrorist organization. The political implications were staggering. The sheer, mind-bending absurdity of it was overwhelming. As if summoned by the gravity of the proposal, the world snapped back into existence. Sound and color rushed back in, and the suffocating pressure vanished. Azazel and the others gasped, stumbling as their senses came back online. They found themselves staring at the impossible sight of Ophis standing before Naruto, her hand outstretched. Before anyone could even scream, another presence announced itself. A massive, crimson magic circle with the Grimoire crest erupted nearby, and from it stepped Seer's ex-Lucifer, Graphia at his side. He had felt Ophis's presence from the underworld, a pressure spike so colossal he had teleported instantly. Ophis, Seer's ex said, his voice dangerously calm, though his crimson aura of destruction was flaring to life around him. What is the meaning of this? Why are you here? Azazel was already on his feet, a grim look on his face. Get back, all of you. He commanded the younger devils. This is not a fight you can even watch. Ophis ignored them completely, her gaze still fixed on Naruto, her hand still outstretched. Naruto looked at her hand, then at the tense, terrified faces of his friends. Then at the two faction leaders preparing for a world-ending battle. He was standing at the epicenter of a political earthquake, and his next words would determine whether it built a new mountain or tore the world apart. He did not take her hand. Instead, he met her gaze with his own. I'll work with you, he said, his voice clear and steady. I'll fight this Erebus. But not for you. Not so you can have your quiet. I'll do it to protect my home and my friends. He crossed his arms. I'm not your ally. I'm not your weapon. We are temporary partners with a shared problem. You give me information. I deal with the threat. Those are the terms. Ophis considered this for a long moment, then slowly lowered her hand. Acceptable, she whispered. Naruto, what are you doing? Rias cried out. Her voice a mixture of fear and confusion. That's Ophis. She's the leader of the people who attacked us. She's also the only one who knows what we're really up against, Naruto countered, not taking his eyes off the dragon god. He is correct, Seer's ex, Azazel said, his analytical mind having already processed the situation. This changes things. If Ophis is willing to cooperate against a common enemy. Seer's ex's power receded slightly, but his guard remained up. An enemy you have yet to name. Erebus, Naruto said. A primordial entity of nothingness that wants to erase existence. The Chaos Brigade is trying to use it as a weapon, and Ophis and I are going to stop them. The statement was so blunt, so utterly insane, that it hung in the air, challenging them to disbelieve it. It was in that moment of tense negotiation that the attack came. Not from Ophis, but from the shadows of the ruined industrial park. Blasphemy. Insanity. A voice roared, dripping with aristocratic contempt. The great Satan Lucifer consorts with fallen angels and now entertains an alliance with the Ouroboros dragon, brokered by this orange filth. We will not stand for it. For the honor of the underworld. For the purity of our bloodlines. Eliminate the threats. Dozens of magic circles flared to life around them. From them emerged a host of high-ranking devils, dressed in ornate battle armor. Their faces twisted with fanatical rage. They were members of the old Satan faction sympathizers, nobles who believed Seer's ex's progressive policies were a stain on their heritage. Their attack was swift and coordinated. Massive spells of fire and lightning erupted, aimed not just at Naruto and Ophis, but at Seer's ex and Azazel as well. They intended to wipe out all the leaders, both old and new, in a single, decisive coup. Rias and the others scrambled to erect barriers, but they were outmatched. Seer's ex and Azazel prepared to counter, but they were already in the heart of the magical storm. Naruto just sighed. Idiots. He didn't move. But just as the volley of spells was about to hit, a figure appeared in front of him in a flash of white light, his draconic armor materializing instantly. I can't let you die just yet, Naruto Uzumaki, Valley Lucifer said, a bored smirk on his face as he spread his wings. Your potential as a rival is far too amusing. Divide. 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 Valley's wings pulsed. And the air warped. The barrage of powerful demonic spells was caught in his field of division. Their power was halved, then halved again, and again, until the apocalypse. PTIC storm was reduced to a shower of harmless, glittering sparks that faded before they even hit the ground. The noble devils stared in shock. The White Dragon Emperor. One of them gasped. He sides with them. Don't get the wrong idea, Valley said, his armor retracting. I'm just protecting my future dance partner. You old fossils are just in the way. The nobles, enraged and desperate, drew their weapons and charged. Naruto simply shook his head. He brought his hands together in a single seal. Sage mode. The natural energy of the world flooded into him. He didn't erupt in a golden shroud. He didn't form a Rasengan. He simply took one step forward and clapped his hands together. Sage art. Amphibian technique. Frog kata. He didn't move from his spot, but the very air around him became an extension of his body. An invisible, unstoppable force of nature energy washed outwards. The charging devils were hit by a series of blows they couldn't see, delivered by an opponent they couldn't touch. One was sent flying as if hit by a freight train. Another's armor crumpled as if struck by an invisible hammer. Their magical attacks dissipated harmlessly against the untouchable aura of his taijutsu. In less than 10 seconds, the entire contingent of elite, noble-born devils was lying on the ground, groaning in pain, their bodies bruised and their armor shattered, but none of them mortally wounded. He had disarmed and defeated dozens of powerful opponents without throwing a single visible punch. He stood over the lead noble, who stared up at him in pure terror. Honor. Purity. Naruto said. His voice quiet but echoing with the weight of the planet itself. You don't know the meaning of those words. All you know is fear. Fear of change, fear of anything you don't understand. He looked up. His gaze sweeping over Searzex, Azazel, and the stunned members of their entourage. The old ways are done. The world is changing. You can either change with it, or you can get left behind. But if you ever threaten my friends again, I'll make sure you have nothing left to be proud of. The threat was absolute. He had demonstrated a level of power and control that was simply beyond them. Searzex and Azazel looked at each other. They had just been saved from an assassination attempt, witnessed an alliance form with their greatest enemy, and watched Naruto Uzumaki single-handedly neutralize a small army of their own people without killing a single one. Searzex finally walked forward, his expression one of profound gravity. Naruto Uzumaki, it seems we owe you our thanks. And perhaps, our trust. He looked at Ophis. This alliance is unofficial, unsanctioned, but necessary. We will not interfere. Azazel nodded. A primordial void-eating reality is slightly higher on my to-do list than political posturing. You have our tacit support, kid. Just try not to get us all erased. Ophis, who had watched the entire exchange with a detached curiosity, finally provided her first piece of intelligence. The Chaos Brigade has a facility in the human world. A former research institute. They are using an artifact to create a stable focal point, to draw more of Erebus's essence through. They think they are summoning a god. They are opening a door for the end of all things. She gave them the coordinates. The next move was clear. The night ended with an unprecedented tableau. Searzex, Lucifer, Azazel, and Ophis all departed, leaving a cratered, silent battlefield. Naruto stood alone for a moment, flanked by a smirking Valley who vanished soon after with a promise of a real fight someday. Rias and the others slowly approached, their expressions a complex mix of awe, worry, and absolute faith. Naruto looked at them, at his small, strange, fiercely loyal family, and then at the dark sky. He was no longer just a visitor here. He was a pillar. And the shadows gathering at the edge of his new world were longer and darker than any he had ever faced before. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Shadow Gate. The air in the Grimoire clubhouse was still and cold, a stark contrast to the nervous energy thrumming through its occupants. The mission briefing was not a formal affair conducted over a holographic table. It was Naruto, standing in the center of the room, looking each of his comrades in the eye. His expression was serious, devoid of its usual easygoing grin, but his voice was steady. A rock in the churning sea of their anxiety. Office says the Chaos Brigade is using an old research institute in the Romanian mountains, he began, his gaze sweeping over the assembled team. It was a strange, unprecedented alliance. Rias and her full peerage stood ready, their loyalty absolute. Zenobia and Irina, representatives of heaven, were there without official orders, their faith placed not in a distant archangel, but in the man standing before them. Ophis, the infinite dragon god, sat silently on the couch, a small, gothic anchor in reality. And, to no one's surprise, Valley Lucifer had appeared an hour earlier, leaning against the far wall with a bored smirk, having invited himself along. They have an artifact, Naruto continued, a key. They're using it to try and open a door to the dimensional gap. To pull more of that, Erebus stuff through. They think they're summoning a god. They're actually ringing the dinner bell for a thing that wants to eat reality. He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. This isn't like the raiding game or the fight with Kokobile. The enemy we're facing isn't just strong. It's wrong. Its energy can erase you. If you get hit, I can't heal you. There's nothing left to heal. So the plan is simple. We get in, we destroy the artifact, and we get out. We move fast, we hit hard, and we watch each other's backs. No heroics. No getting separated. We do this together. And if we face the leaders of the old Satan faction? Rias asked, her voice tight with the pressure of command. Leave them to me, Valley, and Ophis, Naruto stated, his authority unquestionable. Your job is to get to the artifact. That is our only objective. Everything else is a distraction. What a wonderfully straightforward plan, Valley drawled from the corner. Minimal thinking. Maximum destruction. I approve. Naruto looked at each of them again, at Rias's fierce determination, Akino's dangerous smile, Kaniko's stoic resolve, Kiba's sharp focus, Issei's terrified but resolute nod. Zenovia's grim professionalism, and Irina's bright-eyed faith. They were his to protect. They were his reason for being here. All right, he said, a spark of the familiar fire returning to his eyes. Let's go knock on the door. Ophis stood, and with a simple, silent gesture, she tore a hole in the space of the room. It was not a magic circle, it was a jagged, black rip in the fabric of the world. Looking out onto a scene of snow-swept mountains under a bruised purple sky. One by one, they stepped through. The cold was a physical blow. A biting, sub-zero wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of pine and ozone. They stood on a ridge overlooking a sprawling complex nestled in a mountain valley. It was a brutalist scar of concrete and steel, surrounded by a high, electrified fence and dotted with watchtowers. The entire facility hummed with a malevolent, purple energy, a magical fortress masquerading as a research institute. Subtle, Kiba remarked, his hand already resting on the hilt of his sword. They didn't have to wait for the fight to come to them. Alarms blared across the compound, and the ground began to tremble. Hangar doors ground open, and from them swarmed a horde of Chaos Brigade soldiers, rogue mages, and worse, chimeric beasts that looked like nightmares stitched together, creatures that shambled and roared under the corrupting influence of Erebus's faint aura. They were expecting us, Azazel's voice crackled through a small communication device Rias was wearing. He was providing tactical support from a safe distance. Ophis's presence is impossible to hide completely. Be careful. No time to be careful, Valley laughed, his white dragon armor exploding into existence around him. Time to play. He shot into the sky, a comet of white and blue light. And crashed into the enemy's front line, the resulting shockwave sending bodies flying. He's the distraction, Naruto yelled over the roar of battle. Everyone else, with me. Straight for the main building. They surged down the ridge, a tidal wave of disparate, overwhelming power. It was no longer a structured team, it was a force of nature. Naruto led the charge, a golden blur of Sage mode. A Rasengan already forming in his hand. Rias, with me. He commanded. She flew to his side, her crimson aura of destruction flaring. What's the plan? Improvisation. He grinned. He thrust his Rasengan forward, and at the same moment, she unleashed a torrent of her own power, not at the enemy, but directly into his attack. The two energies met, and for a terrifying second, it looked like they would annihilate each other. But instead, they merged. The swirling blue sphere of the Rasengan was instantly consumed by the crimson-black chaos of destruction. The Salt was a churning vortex of pure annihilation, a miniature black hole of rotational power that didn't just explode, it erased. Naruto guided it forward, and it carved a perfect, silent path through the enemy ranks, leaving nothing but empty space where dozens of soldiers and beasts had stood. Holy, Issei stammered from behind them. Keep moving, Naruto ordered. The battle devolved into a series of deadly, beautiful duets. Akino and Zenobia found themselves back to back, surrounded by a ring of heavily armored rogue knights. Try not to get your holy aura on me, sword maiden, Akino purred. Bolts of holy lightning arcing from her fingertips. Try not to let your demonic nature lead you into temptation, fallen angel, Zenobia retorted, her durandal a blur of holy fire. Lightning and holy flames erupted outwards. A perfect storm of their contradictory natures, incinerating their attackers in a spectacular display of celestial and infernal power. A grudging, professional respect passed between them in a shared glance. Kiba and Kaneko were a whirlwind of speed and strength at the vanguard. Kiba would move in a flash, his demonic swords disarming and disabling opponents, creating openings. Kaneko would follow a split second later, her small fists delivering blows with the force of falling meteors, shattering armor and bone. They moved with a silent, practiced synergy, a perfect dance of the knight and the rook. Irina and Issei, though hopelessly outclassed by the monsters around them, fought with a desperate courage. Issei, using his boosted gear in short, repeated bursts, would draw an enemy's attention. While Irina would swoop in from above, her artificial Excalibur a deterrent more than a truly deadly weapon. They were surviving, and in this battle, survival was a victory. Ophis, for her part, simply walked. Anyone or anything that dared to step within 10 feet of her simply ceased to be, crumbling into dust with a quiet sigh, erased by an infinitesimal application of her infinite power. The main group, Naruto, Rias, Valley, and Ophis, smashed through the main entrance of the central building, leaving the rest of the team to keep the main army occupied. The inside of the facility was a sterile, white labyrinth of corridors, but the corrupting influence of Erebus was stronger here. The walls seemed to sweat a thin, black ooze, and whispers echoed from empty rooms. The ritual chamber is below, Ophis stated, pointing towards a heavy blast door at the end of the hall. They are close. Then let's not keep them waiting, Valley said, blasting the door off its hinges with a casual wave of his hand. The room beyond was a vast, circular chamber, its ceiling rising into a dark dome. In the center, a massive, jagged crystal of pure, solidified darkness pulsed with a sickening, anti-light. It was the artifact, and it was drawing power from a dozen chanting mages, funneling it into a single, terrifying point. Standing before the crystal were two figures, their faces masks of arrogant triumph. Shalba Beelzebub and Kryuzuri Asmodeus. Fools! Shalba boomed, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. You have arrived just in time to witness the dawn of a new age. The age of the true demon lords. Behind them, the chimeras they had guarding them stirred. They were larger, more twisted than the ones outside. Creatures with too many limbs, weeping eyes on their backs. And mouths that opened into voids instead of throats. You're too late, Kryuzuri sneered. The ritual is nearly complete. Our new god is about to awaken. You have no idea what you're doing, Naruto said. His voice grim as he stepped forward. We know exactly what we're doing. Shalba roared. We are summoning a power that will crush Searsex, the angels, the fallen, all of you. He raised his hands. Destroy them. The chimeras charged. The final battle began. Valley, with a whoop of delight, engaged Kryuzuri, their battle a chaotic explosion of demonic power and draconic force. Rias took on the chimeras. Her power of destruction the only thing that seemed to have a lasting effect on their twisted forms. Ophis simply stood and watched, her role seemingly complete. Naruto went straight for Shalba. The descendant of Beelzebub was powerful, wielding a unique magic that allowed him to control the properties of anything he considered a devil-made object, but Naruto didn't give him a chance to use it. He closed the distance in an instant, his fighting style a brutal, efficient dance of taijutsu. Shalba, a creature of magic and ranged attacks, was completely out of his depth. Naruto dodged a blast of demonic energy, his foot sweeping out, breaking Shalba's stance. He spun, an elbow connecting with the devil's jaw, sending him stumbling back towards the pulsating crystal. It's over. Naruto yelled, preparing a final blow. Yes, it is. Shalba screamed, a mad, triumphant light in his eyes. He wasn't looking at Naruto. He was looking at the artifact. With the last of his strength, he slammed his own palm against the dark crystal, pouring all of his remaining life force into it. For a new world. For a true lord. The artifact, already overloaded, let out a high tched scream that vibrated in their very souls. Cracks of pure, black energy spider webbed across its surface. Get back. Ophus's toneless voice shouted, the first hint of alarm she had ever shown. The crystal didn't just explode. It imploded. It collapsed in on itself, and in its place, a hole was torn in the world. It wasn't a gate. It wasn't a portal. It was a wound. A perfect circle of absolute, featureless black. No light escaped it, no sound came from it. It was a patch of the universe that had been deleted. And from that wound, the true presence of Erebus finally flooded the chamber. It was not a wave of power or a malevolent aura. It was a sensation. A truth. The fundamental truth that existence was a temporary, fragile mistake. The laws of physics, the flow of magic, the very concept of life, all of it felt like a lie in the face of that perfect, silent nothingness. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The remaining chimeras dissolved, their corrupted forms unable to exceed saint in the face of their master's true nature. They didn't die, they were unmade, turning into a fine gray dust that was sucked into the void. Kryuzuri, locked in battle with Valley, let out a horrified scream as his body began to unravel. His demonic energy siphoned away into nothing. Shalba, at the epicenter, was the first to go, his triumphant expression melting into one of pure, soul-shattering terror as he was erased from time and memory. The very chamber began to disintegrate. The concrete walls turned to sand. The steel supports sagged like melting wax. The air grew thin, the pressure plummeting. Rias fell to her knees. Clutching her head, her power of destruction useless against an enemy that was already the ultimate destruction. Valley's balance breaker armor, one of the most powerful artifacts in existence, began to crack and flicker, the metaphysical pressure of non-existence too much for it to bear. What is this? He choked out, his power of division utterly useless. How could he divide nothing? Ophus, the dragon god of infinity, took a step back, her eternal, stoic expression finally breaking, replaced by a look of primal, instinctual fear. Her infinity was the infinity of something. This was the infinity of its opposite. Only Naruto remained standing. The others were beings of this reality. Their powers were defined by its laws. But Naruto was an anomaly. His six-path sage mode. The power of the sage of creation, was not a product of this world. It was a fundamental force in its own right. It was the power of life, of existence itself. His body erupted in a brilliant, sun-gold flame, a desperate, instinctual act of self-preservation. His chakra, the energy of creation, was pushing back against the encroaching tide of the void, creating a tiny, fragile island of, is in an ocean of, is not. He stood alone, the last bastion of reality in a room that was ceasing to be. Before him was not an enemy he could punch, not a monster he could seal. Before him was a silent, patient, all-consuming end. And it was growing. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The Sage of a New World. The presence of Erebus was not a presence at all. It was an absence. A conclusion. It was the chilling, final truth whispered at the end of the universe, that all the sound and fury, all the love and hate, all the light and life, were temporary anomalies in an eternity of perfect, silent nothingness. It did not attack. It merely revealed. And that revelation was annihilation. Valley's divine dividing armor, a construct of a dragon's soul and a god's system, sputtered and died. The PT of power was a function of existence. Where existence failed, so did power. He fell to one knee, the silver-haired prodigy gasping as the very will to fight, the ambition that had defined his entire life, was being siphoned out of him. Deemed meaningless by the encroaching void. Rias's power of destruction, the ultimate expression of demonic chaos, was like a child's tantrum in the face of absolute finality. She clutched her head. A scream caught in her throat as she felt not pain, but an unraveling of self. Her memories, her love for her family, her newfound hope, all of it felt thin, like old photographs fading in the sun. Even Ophus, the infinite, was finite here. Her infinity was a measure of time and space, of being. She was a line segment attempting to comprehend the blankness of the page it was drawn upon. The dragon god of infinity, for the first time in her eternal life, felt small. Only one light remained. Naruto stood in the heart of the unraveling room, a solitary sun against a universe of encroaching night. His six-path sage mode burned, a brilliant golden aura of pure life force, the very essence of creation. It was a defiant scream of I am against the void's patient whisper of you are not. The floor 50 feet around him remained solid, the air breathable. He was an island of reality, and the tide of nothingness was rising. Kit, this is bad, Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind. The great beast's usual bravado replaced by a primal, ancient dread. This isn't chakra. This isn't power. It's the end. Pushing back won't be enough. It's patient. Naruto knew. He could feel it. He was pouring out an immense amount of energy just to maintain this tiny sanctuary of existence. He could keep it up for hours, maybe even days. But the void was eternal. It could wait. This was a battle of attrition he could not win. A stalemate was a loss, just a slower one. He looked over his shoulder. He saw Valley, the great rival, brought low. He saw Ophis, the dragon god, afraid. And he saw them, Rias, Akino, Kaneko, the others, huddled behind him, their faces pale with a terror that went beyond the fear of death. They were afraid of being erased. In their eyes, he saw his reason. He wasn't fighting for a principle. He wasn't fighting to prove his strength. He was fighting for her smile. For her teasing purr. For her quiet trust. For their arguments, their laughter, the simple, profound warmth of their presence. They had taken in a lost, broken stranger and given him a home. He had fought to save one world and lost it. He would not fail this one. His resolve hardened, coalescing from a desperate defense into a sharp, decisive point. He couldn't outlast the void. He couldn't destroy it. The laws of this universe weren't built for that. But he wasn't entirely of this universe. You're right, Kurama. Naruto's thought was a blade of pure clarity. Pushing back is a losing game. A wild, desperate, and brilliant idea sparked in his mind. An idea born of a lifetime of unpredictable, insane gambits. So I'm not going to push. I'm going to pull. Pull. Kit, what are you? No. Are you insane? You can't contain that. It will unmake you from the inside out. The seal that held it was a balance. Naruto reasoned, his mind moving with a speed born of absolute necessity. My arrival, my power, it tipped the scales. This world doesn't have what it takes to build a new seal. He took a deep, steadying breath, his golden aura flaring brighter. So all have to become one. He turned to face the wound in reality, the perfect circle of black. He closed his eyes, not in surrender, but in focus. He reached out, not with his hands, but with his will. To everyone, he whispered, a message carried on the winds of his chakra, a final word to the friends huddled behind him. Thank you. And then, he reversed the flow. Instead of projecting his power outwards, he opened a channel inwards. He made himself a vacuum, a spiritual and energetic void, and began to draw the essence of Erebus towards him. The effect was immediate and agonizing. It was not a physical pain of fire or steel. It was the pain of decreation. He felt his memories begin to fray, the edges of his own history turning to dust. He saw flashes of his past, his lonely childhood on the swing, his first Rasengan with Jiraiya, his final clash with Sasuke, and felt the conceptual truth of those moments being challenged. As if the void were whispering, but what if none of that ever happened? What if you never were? His golden aura, the flame of life, was instantly swarmed by the encroaching blackness. His body became a battleground for the two most fundamental forces imaginable, is versus is not. I am Naruto Uzumaki. He roared in his soul, a desperate, defiant cry against the silent tide. He anchored himself not to his past, but to his present. The image of Rias's worried face. The feeling of Akino's hand on his. The taste of Ichiraku ramen. The weight of his promise to his friends. These were his truths. These were his anchors in the storm of unbeing. The blackness flooded into him, a river of anti-existence pouring into the vessel of his soul. His golden shroud of chakra flickered violently. Shot through with veins of pure, starless black. One of his eyes, his right, lost its color, the blue iris and slitted pupil dissolving into a miniature void, a perfect orb of nothingness. Now, Kurama. The Nine Tails. Feeling Naruto's unbreakable will, poured its own power into the crucible. Kurama's chakra, a being of pure emotion and living energy, the ultimate expression of yin, acted as a binding agent. It did not fight the void, nor did it fight Naruto's yang power. It became the chain, the cage, the metaphysical glue that forced the two opposing absolutes into a single, cohesive, horrifying whole. Inside him, a new universe was born and died 1,000 times a second. The sun of his six paths yang power, the force of creation, was locked in an eternal, violent orbit with the black hole of Erebus's void. And around them both, the roaring, crimson chains of Kurama's chakra held them in a state of impossible, volatile balance. Outside, the effect was just as dramatic. As Naruto drank the void from the room, the wound in reality began to shrink. The unraveling of the chamber slowed, then stopped. Reality, fragile and terrified, began to reassert itself. The walls solidified. The air thickened. The oppressive silence was broken by a collective, ragged gasp as everyone's senses flooded back in. They watched, horrified and helpless, as the last of the blackness was drawn from the portal into Naruto's body. The wound in space sealed itself with a final, silent snap, leaving behind nothing but a scorch mark on the floor. The battle was over. Naruto stood in the center of the room, his body trembling uncontrollably. The golden aura around him was gone, as was the terrifying blackness. He looked normal. For a single, eternal second, he stood there, his head bowed. Then, his eyes rolled back. And he collapsed, falling to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. Naruto. Rias's scream broke the spell. The world snapped back into motion. Forgetting all sense of rank or decorum, she scrambled to his side, gathering his unconscious form in her arms. The others rushed forward, forming a protective circle around him. Is he? Issei stammered, his face streaked with tears. Akino knelt, her hand trembling as she reached for his neck, searching for a pulse. She found one, strong and steady. But his energy, it was different. The brilliant, sun-like warmth was still there, but beneath it, there was a new depth. A profound, endless stillness. Like looking at the surface of a calm ocean and knowing that the abyss lay beneath. He was alive. He had won. He had faced the end of all things and had wrestled it into submission by making it a part of himself. Weeks later, the world had settled into a new, strange kind of peace. The Chaos Brigade, its leaders either captured, erased, or in hiding, was shattered. The new tripartite alliance between the factions was moving forward, the shared trauma of the summit attack having forged bonds stronger than any treaty. But for the occupants of the Grimoire Clubhouse, the world had shrunk to the size of this single room. Naruto was recovering. He had slept for a solid week, his body and soul knitting themselves back together. Finding a new equilibrium. Now, he sat propped up on the couch, a blanket over his lap, looking pale but peaceful. The girls had instituted a fiercely guarded rotation for his care. Today, it was Kaniko's turn to feed him, a task she performed with a silent, solemn focus, offering him small spoonfuls of rice porridge. Rias was across the room, pretending to read a report from her brother. Though her eyes flickered towards Naruto every few seconds. Akino was brewing a special, restorative tea, its fragrant steam filling the room with a sense of calm. Zenobia and Irina W. Air bickering in hushed tones over who was better at peeling apples. There was no rivalry, no jealousy. Only a shared, profound relief and a love for the boy who had become the center of their world. They had seen him as a powerhouse. A hero, a king. But now, in his vulnerability, they saw him simply as their Naruto. And their bond with him, and with each other, had been tempered into something unbreakable. He finally opened his eyes. The familiar cerulean blue clear and steady. The void in his right eye was gone, but they all knew the power was still there, sleeping deep within him. Hey, he said, his voice a little hoarse. Did we win? A wet, relieved laugh escaped Rias. Yes, Naruto, she said, finally putting her report down and moving to sit on the edge of the couch beside him. We won. Good, he sighed. A real smile touching his lips. I'm hungry. Is there any ramen? The simple, absurd question broke the last of the tension. Irina cheered. Zenobia allowed a small, genuine smile. Akino laughed, a clear, musical sound. Kaniko nodded, already preparing to find him the food he desired. From a discreet observation circle in the corner of the room, Searsex, Azazel, and Michael watched the scene unfold. He has stabilized, Michael noted, his voice filled with a quiet awe. He now contains a power antithetical to our very existence, yet he remains, himself. More than himself, Azazel corrected. A thoughtful look on his face. He's a paradox. A perfect balance of creation and void. He's no longer just a piece on the board, or even a player. He's become a fundamental part of the game itself. A pillar supporting reality. Sears watched his sister laugh, her face alight with a joy he hadn't seen in years. He watched the powerful women of heaven and the underworld orbiting this impossible boy. Not as subordinates, but as partners. A family. Perhaps, the Crimson Satan said softly, a smile touching his own lips. He is not just a pillar. Perhaps he is what our world has needed all along. Not a new god, or a new king. He looked at the boy on the couch, surrounded by the powerful, devoted women who had chosen to stand by his side, who had become the heart of his new world. But a new beginning. Naruto took the offered bowl of ramen from Kaneko, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his friends, his family. The hole in his heart, the one left by the world he had lost, was finally full. He was no longer the lonely orphan, the Jinchuriki, the outcast. He was home. And for the sage of a new world, that was a victory greater than any battle. Chapter 10 End.